The crystal champagne flute shattered against marble before anyone registered what happened. Jamal's hand connected with Terrence's face. The sound cracked through the ballroom like a gunshot. 200 guests froze mid-conversation. The orchestra's violins stuttered into silence. Rose petals, still falling from the ceiling's mechanical release, drifted through air thick with shock. Terrence stumbled backward, one hand catching the edge of a white-clothed table, the other instinctively moving to his stomach. His cheek bloomed red. The Tom Ford tuxedo he'd borrowed from his best friend suddenly felt too tight, constricting around ribs that couldn't pull in enough oxygen. "You really thought you could show up here?" Jamal's voice carried across the room, each word sharp enough to cut. "Looking like that? Carrying that?" The Tiffany bracelet on Terrence's wrist caught the light from a dozen chandeliers as his hand trembled against the curve of his belly. Barely visible under the tailored jacket, but there. Undeniable. 3 months along and already complicating everything. Hi, viewers. Kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Terrence's vision blurred. Not from tears, he'd promised himself no more tears over Jamal, but from the way his body wanted to collapse inward, to make himself smaller, invisible. The Omega instinct. The thing he'd fought against his entire adult life now screaming at him to submit, to lower his eyes, to accept what an alpha decided he deserved. "The baby isn't even yours." Terrence's voice came out steadier than he expected. "Yeah, you made that clear 6 months ago when you—" "When I what?" Jamal stepped closer. His Louis Vuitton suit fit him perfectly, tailored to emphasize broad shoulders and the kind of presence that made rooms rearrange themselves around him. Gold cufflinks flashed. "When I told you the truth? That you were nothing but a mistake? A body that felt good for a few months?" Someone in the crowd gasped. Terrence couldn't see who. Couldn't focus on anything except Jamal's face. The same face that used to whisper promises in the dark, that had marked him once with teeth and vows and lies. "You embarrassed yourself coming here," Jamal continued. His hand raised again. Terrence didn't flinch this time. Couldn't. His body had gone rigid, locked in place by something deeper than fear. The baby kicked, a flutter so small only he could feel it, but enough to remind him why he'd stopped running from his past. Then the air shifted. Movement from the shadows near the entrance, where light from the chandeliers didn't quite reach. A man stepped forward, tall, dark-skinned, wearing a Ralph Lauren suit that looked like it cost more than Terrence's entire year's rent. His presence filled the room differently than Jamal's. No aggression, no performance, just absolute certainty that everything within eyesight belonged to him. Marcus Deveraux, owner of 3 hotels, 2 casinos, and half the underground economy in New York. The man who'd invited Terrence to this wedding as a guest of honor, though Terrence still didn't understand why. Marcus's eyes locked on Jamal's raised hand. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. "Touch him again," Marcus said quietly, each word deliberate as a knife pressed to skin. "And you'll learn what it means to disappear." Jamal's hand froze mid-air. For the first time since Terrence had known him, 3 years of chaos, manipulation, and calculated cruelty, Jamal looked uncertain. Marcus closed the distance between them in 4 measured steps. He didn't rush. Didn't need to. The crowd parted like he'd commanded it, though he'd given no signal. He stopped directly between Terrence and Jamal, close enough that Terrence could smell his cologne, something expensive and unfamiliar. Close enough to feel the heat radiating from his body, or maybe that was Terrence's own pulse hammering against his ribs. "This Omega," Marcus said, still not raising his voice, "is under my protection now." He reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out a small velvet box. Now Terrence's breath caught. He knew what lived in boxes like that, had seen the ceremony performed once years ago before he'd presented as Omega and understood what it meant. What it cost. Marcus opened the box. Inside, a ring, platinum band with an intricate pattern etched into the metal, too detailed to see clearly from where the guest stood, pressed against walls and pillars, desperate to witness but terrified to get closer. No. Terrence heard himself say it. You can't. We barely know each other. You can't just... Marcus turned to face him. His expression didn't change, but something in his eyes did. Something that looked almost like a question, like permission being asked without words. Would you rather go back to him? Marcus's voice dropped lower, meant only for Terrence now. I'm back to hands that break what they touch. Terrence's cheek still burned. His body still wanted to fold inward. But underneath the fear and shame, something else stirred. A rage he'd buried so deep he'd forgotten it existed. No, he whispered. Marcus took Terrence's left hand. His grip was warm, steady. Nothing like Jamal's hands, which had always held him too tight or not at all. The ring slid onto Terrence's finger as gasps rippled through the crowd. Jamal lunged forward. You can't do this. Marcus moved faster than Terrence could track. One moment Jamal was advancing, the next he was on his knees. Marcus's hand wrapped around his wrist at an angle that made Jamal's face go white with pain. Leave, Marcus said, while you still can. Security appeared from nowhere. 3 men in black suits, faces Terrence didn't recognize. They hauled Jamal to his feet and dragged him toward the exit. Jamal twisted back, eyes finding Terrence one last time. You'll regret this, Jamal spat. Both of you. You have no idea what you've just started. The doors slammed shut behind him. The orchestra, reading some invisible signal, struck up a waltz. Conversations resumed in hushed tones. The world tilted back toward normal, though nothing felt normal anymore. Marcus still held Terrence's hand. Are you hurt? He asked. Terrence shook his head. Couldn't quite find words. The ring on his finger felt heavier than it should, not from weight, but from meaning. Good. Marcus released him, but didn't step back. We need to talk, somewhere private. I don't understand, Terrence finally managed. Why would you? Why me? Marcus's expression shifted. Something almost like a smile, but darker. More complicated. Because, he said, I've been watching you for longer than you know. And what I've seen is someone who survives things that should break them? He paused. Also, I hate men who put their hands on people who can't fight back. I can fight, Terrence said automatically. I know. This time Marcus did smile. That's why I chose you. Chose. Past tense. Like the decision had been made long before tonight, before the slap, before everything fell apart. Come. Marcus gestured toward a side door Terrence hadn't noticed before. Your ex just made you the center of attention at someone else's wedding. The least I can do is offer you somewhere to breathe. Terrence looked down at the ring, and at the mark of ownership he'd just accepted from a man he'd met exactly 3 times. Twice at charity events where they'd exchanged maybe 10 words total, and once at a restaurant where Marcus had sent over an expensive bottle of wine with a note that said only, "You deserve better." He should say no. Should run. Should do literally anything except follow a mafia boss into a private room while wearing his ring and carrying another man's baby. But Jamal's words still echoed in his skull. You're nothing. A mistake. A body. And Marcus had called him chosen. Okay, Terrence heard himself say, but just to talk. Marcus's hand settled lightly on the small of Terrence's back, guiding him toward the door. The touch burned through expensive fabric. Of course, Marcus said. Just to talk. The door clicked shut behind them. And Terrence realized he'd just made the second biggest mistake of his life. Or maybe for the first time, he'd actually made the right choice. He wouldn't know which until it was already too late to turn back. The private room smelled like leather and old money. The kind of space where decisions got made that changed entire neighborhoods. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Manhattan's glittering skyline. A mahogany desk dominated one corner. Two chairs faced each other across a Persian rug that probably cost more than Terrence's car. Marcus locked the door. Terrence's pulse jumped. "You said just to talk." "We will." Marcus moved to a sidebar, poured amber liquid into cut crystal glasses. "But I'm not naive enough to think everyone believes that's all happening in here. Let them imagine. Let them talk. It works better for both of us if they think you're already mine." Already mine. Like the marking had completed something that started long before tonight. Terrence's hand moved to his stomach again. The baby kicked. Stronger this time, like it could feel his anxiety bleeding through. Marcus noticed. His eyes tracked the movement, softened almost imperceptibly. "How far along?" 13 weeks. Terrence took the offered glass but didn't drink. "Doctor says everything's fine. Considering the father is a narcissistic piece of shit who doesn't deserve to breathe the same air?" Terrence laughed, sudden, sharp, inappropriate. The sound surprised him. "Yeah, considering that." Marcus settled into one of the chairs, gestured for Terrence to take the other. His movements were controlled, economical, nothing wasted, nothing accidental. "How long were you together?" 2 years. The words tasted bitter. "First year was good. He knew what to say, how to make me feel like I mattered. Then I presented Omega, late presentation, 24 instead of 18, and everything changed." Marcus nodded like he'd expected this. He couldn't handle not being the only one with power in the relationship. "He handled it by making sure I knew I didn't have any." Terrence stared into his glass. "First, it was small things. Comments about my weight, my job, my friends. Then he started deciding where I could go, who I could see. Said it was for my protection because Omegas need alphas to keep them safe." "But he wasn't keeping you safe." "No." Terrence's jaw tightened. "He was keeping me isolated. Easier to control someone when they don't have anyone else to turn to." The memory surfaced before he could stop it. Jamal's hand around his throat, pressing him against the apartment wall, voice gentle as poisoned honey. "You make me do this. You know that, right? If you just listen, if you just be good, I wouldn't have to remind you." "When did you leave?" Terrence met Marcus's eyes. Found something there he didn't expect. Not pity, but recognition. Like Marcus had seen this story before. Maybe lived adjacent to it. 6 months ago. Found out I was pregnant 2 weeks after I moved out. He laughed again, darker this time. Ironic, right? Finally get free and discover I'm tied to him forever anyway. "You're not tied to him." Marcus leaned forward. "The baby ties you to biology. That's different." "He'll fight for custody. Use his connections, his family money." "He won't." The certainty in Marcus's voice stopped Terrence mid-sentence. "You don't know Jamal. I know men like Jamal." Marcus's expression hardened. "I know exactly how they operate, and I know how to make them understand when they've lost." Terrence wanted to believe him. Wanted it so badly his chest ached with the wanting. But trust was expensive, and he'd already spent too much of it on the wrong person. "Why are you doing this?" The question burst out before Terrence could calculate whether asking was safe. "You don't know me. Don't owe me anything. Why mark me? Why get involved?" Marcus studied him for a long moment. Outside, sirens wailed through the Manhattan night. Inside, silence stretched thin as spider silk. 3 months ago, Marcus finally said, I saw you at the Riverside Gala. You were with him. He had his hand on your back. Looked possessive to anyone watching. Protective, even. But I saw your face when you thought no one was looking." Terrence's breath caught. You look like you were drowning. Marcus's voice dropped. Like you were screaming inside but couldn't make sound. I've seen that look before. On my mother's face before she finally left my father. Before he made sure she regretted leaving. The implication hung in the air between them. I started asking questions, Marcus continued. Quiet questions. Found out about the isolation, the control, the times you showed up to work with bruises you claimed came from being clumsy. Heat flooded Terrence's face. Shame and anger tangled together. You investigated me? I protected you. There's a difference. Marcus didn't apologize. And when I heard you'd left him, I thought that was the end of it. You were safe. Moving on. Then I got the wedding invitation and saw your name on the guest list as Jamal's +1. I didn't... Terrence shook his head. I never agreed to come with him. He must have added my name himself. I know. Marcus's jaw tightened. That's why I made sure you received a separate invitation. From me. As my guest. The pieces clicked together. The embossed invitation that had arrived at Terrence's new apartment. No return address, just a note that said, "You're stronger than you know. Come prove it." He'd thought it was from his best friend Deshaun, who knew Marcus through business circles. You manipulated this whole situation. I created an opportunity, Marcus corrected. What happened when you walked through those doors? That was Jamal showing everyone exactly who he is. I just made sure people were watching. Terrence should be angry. Should feel used, maneuvered, controlled all over again. But looking at Marcus, at the careful way he held himself, the controlled intensity in his dark eyes, Terrence realized this wasn't control. This was strategy. And the marking? Terrence held up his hand, the ring catching lamplight. Was that planned too? No. For the first time, Marcus looked uncertain. That was impulse. Seeing his hand on you, knowing he'd done worse behind closed doors, knowing he'd keep doing it unless someone made him stop. He broke off. I don't do impulse. I don't make decisions without calculating every angle, but standing there, watching you hold your ground even while hurting. He didn't finish. Didn't need to. Terrence's omega instincts were screaming at him. Contradictory messages that made his head spin. Run from this alpha who orchestrated situations and knew too much. Submit to this alpha who'd protected him when no one else would. Trust this alpha who'd just admitted to watching him, investigating him, planning around him. I can't be someone's project, Terrence said quietly. I can't be the broken thing you fix to make yourself feel better about whatever happened to your mother. Marcus's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind his eyes. Pain, maybe, or respect. You're not broken, he said. You're dangerous, that's different. Dangerous? Terrence almost laughed. I'm 3 months pregnant, unemployed, and I just got slapped in front of half of New York's elite. What about that is dangerous? You survived Jamal. Marcus stood, moved to the window. His silhouette cut sharp against the city lights. You survived 2 years of systematic destruction and still had enough fire left to walk into a room full of his people, knowing he'd be there, knowing he'd try to humiliate you. That takes more strength than most people have after a single bad day. He turned back to face Terrence. Dangerous people don't break. They bend, they learn. They wait for the right moment and then they burn everything down. His voice dropped. I don't want to fix you, Terrence. I want to watch you remember how to set fires. The words hit Terrence in the chest, sharp and sudden. No one had ever, not even before Jamal, not even when he still believed in himself, no one had ever looked at him and seen potential instead of damage. What if I don't know how anymore? The admission cost him. What if he took that too? Marcus crossed the room in 3 strides, stopped close enough that Terrence had to tilt his head back to maintain eye contact. Close enough that the height difference made Terrence's omega instincts purr with interest, which he viciously suppressed. Then I'll remind you, Marcus said. Not because you need me to, but because I'm selfish enough to want to see what happens when you remember who you are. Terrence's phone buzzed in his pocket. He ignored it. It buzzed again, then again. Marcus's expression shifted. You should check that. Terrence pulled out his phone. 7 missed calls, 12 texts. All from the same number. One he'd blocked months ago, but that apparently had found a way through anyway. Jamal. The preview of the latest message made Terrence's blood freeze. You think he'll protect you? You think he gives a shit about some broken omega and a bastard baby? He's playing you, just like I did. Difference is, I'm honest about what you're worth. Marcus plucked the phone from Terrence's shaking hand. Read the message. His jaw went tight. He's going to come after me, Terrence whispered. After us. The baby. He won't let this go. I know. Marcus's voice was deadly calm. Let him try. You don't understand what he's capable of, and he doesn't understand what I'm capable of. Marcus handed the phone back. But he's about to learn. The promise in those words should have frightened Terrence. Instead, for the first time in months, he felt something like hope. Outside, thunder rumbled across the city. The first drops of rain streaked down the windows. I need to tell you something, Terrence said, before this goes any further. Before you make promises you can't keep. Marcus waited. The baby? Terrence forced himself to continue. Jamal's going to claim it's not his. He's going to say I cheated, that I'm trying to trap someone. You probably now. He has lawyers. Resources. He'll make this a nightmare. Then we'll give him one back. Marcus's expression was ice. You're not alone anymore, Terrence. That's not manipulation. That's not strategy. That's a choice I made the moment I put that ring on your finger. The baby kicked again. Terrence's hand moved to his stomach automatically. Marcus's eyes tracked the movement. But may I? The question surprised Terrence more than anything else had tonight. Jamal had never asked, had put his hands wherever he wanted, whenever he wanted, like Terrence's body was territory he'd conquered. Okay, Terrence said softly. Marcus's hand settled over Terrence's stomach. Warm, careful, reverent in a way that made Terrence's throat tight. They stood like that for a long moment, the baby moving between their palms, the ring on Terrence's finger catching light, the storm gathering strength outside. I'm not good at this, Marcus admitted. At people. At caring about things that can be taken away. My work is clean, predictable. You do X, you get Y, but this... He paused. This is messy, complicated, and I'm asking you to trust me anyway. I don't know if I can, Terrence whispered. Trust broke something in me. I don't know if it works anymore. Then don't trust me. Marcus's hand remained steady. Trust yourself. Trust that you're smart enough to walk away if this becomes another cage. Because I swear to you, Terrence, I will never lock the door. The sincerity in his voice was almost painful. Terrence's phone buzzed again. More messages, more threats disguised as concern. He's not going to stop, Terrence said. I know, Marcus replied. That's what I'm counting on. The first threat arrived 3 days after the wedding. Terrence found it slipped under his apartment door when he came home from the grocery store. A manila envelope, no return address, his name written in Jamal's distinctive handwriting. His stomach dropped before he even opened it. Inside, photographs, dozens of them. Terrence leaving his OBGYN appointment. Terrence at the coffee shop on 5th Street where he'd started spending mornings. Terrence walking through Central Park, hand on his barely visible bump, face tilted toward weak autumn sunlight. Someone had been following him, for days, maybe weeks. The note was brief. Cute baby bump. Be a shame if something happened to it. Terrence's hands shook so badly he dropped the envelope. Photos scattered across his floor like evidence of how completely unsafe he'd ever been. His phone rang. Marcus's name on the screen. "How did you—" Terrence started. "Your building has cameras. I have someone monitoring them." Marcus's voice was tight. "Don't leave your apartment. I'm sending a car." "You're watching me too?" The accusation came out sharper than intended. "I'm keeping you alive. There's a difference." A pause. Did you open the envelope?" Terrence looked down at the photos, his own face staring back at him from a dozen angles, captured by someone who'd learned his routines, his patterns, his vulnerabilities. "Yes." Marcus cursed, low, vicious. "Don't touch anything else. The car will be there in 4 minutes." "I can't just—" Terrence stopped. What was the alternative? Stay here and wait for Jamal to escalate from surveillance to action? Pretend the photos were an empty threat when they both knew better? 4 minutes, Marcus repeated. Pack what you need for a few days. We'll figure out the rest later. The line went dead. Terrence stood frozen in his small apartment, the place he'd moved to 6 months ago with nothing but 2 suitcases and a desperate need for walls that didn't remember Jamal's voice. He'd felt safe here. Anonymous. The building was old. The neighbors kept to themselves, and for the first time in 2 years, he could breathe without wondering if someone would criticize how he did it. But safety had been an illusion, just like everything else. The baby kicked, hard enough that Terrence gasped and pressed his hand to his side. "I know," he whispered to his stomach. "I know I messed up. I should have stayed away from both of them." But even as he thought it, he knew that wasn't the answer. Jamal had found him anyway. The wedding had just accelerated a timeline that was always going to end with confrontation. Terrence grabbed a duffel bag from his closet and started packing. Clothes, toiletries, the prenatal vitamins his doctor had prescribed, while his fingers brushed against something small and hard in his nightstand drawer. The ultrasound photo from his 12-week appointment. The baby was just a blur of gray and white, barely recognizable as human, but Terrence had stared at that image for hours when he'd first gotten it. Proof that something good could exist even when everything else was falling apart. He tucked it into his wallet. A car horn sounded outside. 2 short blasts. Terrence peered through his window and saw a black SUV idling at the curb. Tinted windows. License plate he didn't recognize. Could be Marcus's people. Could be Jamal's. Could be someone else entirely, because apparently Terrence's life had become the kind of mess where multiple dangerous men wanted to control his location. His phone buzzed. Text from Marcus. Black SUV. Driver's name is Darius. He'll get you to me safely. Terrence grabbed his bag and headed for the door. Paused with his hand on the knob. This was it. The moment where he officially stopped pretending he could handle this alone. Where he accepted that Marcus's protection came with strings attached, with expectations, with a future Terrence couldn't predict or control. Just like accepting Jamal's love had. Except Marcus had never called it love, had never promised forever or happy endings. Had just offered what Terrence needed most. A door that stayed unlocked. Terrence pulled open his apartment door and nearly collided with his neighbor, Mrs. Chen, who was shuffling toward the elevator with her grocery cart. "Oh," she startled, then smiled. "Terrence, going somewhere?" "Just a few days with a friend." The lie came easy. Too easy. He'd gotten good at lying during his time with Jamal. Small ones, protective ones. The kind that kept people from asking questions he couldn't safely answer. Mrs. Chen's eyes dropped to his stomach, then back to his face. She was in her 70s, had lived in this building for 40 years, and had the kind of sharp awareness that came from surviving her own difficult history. "Be careful," she said quietly. "Men who send cars in the middle of the day aren't usually the careful type." Terrence wanted to tell her she was wrong, that Marcus was different, strategic, controlled. But Mrs. Chen was right. Men who operated the way Marcus did, who had the resources to monitor buildings and send drivers at a moment's notice, who marked Omegas they barely knew at weddings in front of 200 witnesses. Those men were dangerous. The question was whether Terrence needed dangerous right now more than he needed safe. "I will," he promised. "Thank you." She nodded and continued toward the elevator, grocery cart wheels squeaking. Terrence wondered if she'd be okay if Jamal would escalate to threatening his neighbors just to prove a point. Then he wondered when his life had become the kind of disaster that put little old ladies at risk. The SUV's passenger window rolled down as Terrence approached. The driver matched Marcus's description. Mid-30s, dark skin, professional demeanor that suggested military or security background. "Mr. Winters?" Darius asked. "I need to see some ID before we go." Terrence appreciated the caution even as it made him nervous. He showed his license. Darius compared it to something on his phone, then nodded and popped the trunk. Bag goes back here. You ride up front where I can see you and respond if anything happens." "Respond to what?" Darius gave him a look that suggested the question answered itself. "Sir, someone's been photographing you without permission and leaving threats at your residence. Until we're clear of the area, we assume hostile surveillance and plan accordingly." Hostile surveillance, like Terrence's life had become a military operation instead of just an existence. He put his bag in the trunk and climbed into the passenger seat. The interior smelled like leather and the faint ozone scent of high-end electronics. Screens were built into the dashboard, more than any normal car should have. One of them showed a map with their route highlighted. Another displayed what looked like security camera feeds. Where are we going?" Terrence asked as Darius pulled into traffic. "Mr. Deveraux has a property in Brooklyn. Secure building, private entrance, better surveillance than what you had in Queens." Darius navigated smoothly through afternoon traffic. "You'll stay there until we assess the threat level and determine next steps." "You'll stay there. Not we'll take you there if you want to go." The presumption should have bothered Terrence more than it did. "What if I decide I don't want to stay?" Darius glanced at him. "Then you don't stay." Mr. Deveraux was very clear. This is protection, not imprisonment. You're free to leave whenever you want, but I'd recommend hearing him out before you make that decision. They drove in silence for a while, while Terrence watched the city slide past, familiar streets transforming into unfamiliar neighborhoods as they crossed into Brooklyn. His phone buzzed repeatedly in his pocket. He didn't need to check to know it was Jamal. "You should probably block that number," Darius said. "Or better yet, let our tech people clone your phone and set up monitoring. They can intercept threats before you see them." "That's an invasion of privacy." "So is photographing you without consent." Darius's voice was matter-of-fact. "The difference is our invasion is designed to keep you safe." Terrence wanted to argue, wanted to insist that there had to be another way, something less intrusive, less reminiscent of how Jamal had monitored his every communication. But the envelope of photos was still fresh in his mind, and the baby was still kicking in his stomach. And the truth was that Terrence didn't have better options. They pulled up to a high-rise in Brooklyn Heights, the kind of building that had doormen and keycard access and monthly fees that exceeded Terrence's former rent. Darius used a card to access the underground parking garage, then drove to a private elevator at the far end. "Penthouse access," he explained. "This elevator doesn't stop on other floors. Can't be called from them either. Only 3 people have access cards, Mr. Deveraux, myself, and now you." He handed Terrence a sleek black card with a magnetic strip. No name, no markings. Just an anonymous piece of plastic that apparently granted access to Marcus's private sanctuary. The elevator opened directly into a sprawling penthouse apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the East River and Manhattan's skyline beyond. Modern furniture in grays and blacks. Art on the walls that Terrence recognized from a museum exhibition he'd attended years ago. Originals then, not prints. Marcus stood at the windows, phone pressed to his ear, voice low and intense. He glanced up as Terrence entered, said something final into the phone, and ended the call. "You're safe here," he said without preamble. "Building security is former Secret Service. Every entrance is monitored. Windows are bulletproof glass. If Jamal wants to get to you, he'll have to go through protocols that would make the Pentagon jealous." Terrence set down his duffel bag. "This is excessive." "This is necessary." Marcus approached but stopped a respectful distance away. "He's escalating. The photos are just the beginning. Men like Jamal, when they lose control, they don't accept it. They double down. They make examples." "An example of what?" "Of what happens to people who think they can leave." Marcus's expression was grim. "My security team tracked the photographer. Amateur work, hired through a third party, probably doesn't even know who commissioned the job. But the escalation pattern is classic. Surveillance, then threats, then direct action." Terrence's hand moved to his stomach. "What kind of direct action?" Marcus didn't answer immediately. His jaw worked like he was choosing words carefully. "Physical harm," he finally said. "To you or the baby. Staged to look like an accident. Fall down the stairs, mugging gone wrong, car accident. Something that lets him play the concerned ex while removing the problem." The problem? Terrence and his baby, reduced to an obstacle in Jamal's narrative. "And I should go to the police," Terrence said. Knew even as he said it how useless that would be. "And tell them what?" Marcus asked gently. "That your ex left photos under your door? That's not illegal. That he's texting you? Block the number. That you're afraid? They'll take a report and tell you to call if something actually happens. By then it's too late." "So what? I just hide here? Let you handle everything while sit around being grateful?" The words came out harsher than intended, sharpened by fear and pregnancy hormones and the crushing weight of losing control again. Marcus didn't react to the hostility. "No, you learn how to fight back. You testify when I get you the legal protection you need. You document everything, and you stop thinking of yourself as a victim waiting for rescue." He moved closer, still maintaining distance but near enough that Terrence could see the intensity in his dark eyes. "I'm not trying to save you, Terrence. I'm trying to give you the tools to save yourself. Because when this is over, and it will be over, you need to know you're capable of surviving anything." The baby kicked again. Terrence wondered if it could sense his stress, if his fear was already damaging this tiny life that had no choice in any of this. "I'm tired," he admitted. "I'm so tired of being scared." "Then stop being scared alone." Marcus extended his hand, an offer, not a command. "Let me be scared with you, at least until we figure out how to make him stop." Terrence looked at the offered hand, at the ring still on his own finger, marking him as claimed by a man he barely knew, on with the windows overlooking a city that had become hostile territory. He took Marcus's hand. "Okay," he whispered, "but I need you to promise me something. Anything. If this gets too dangerous, if protecting me puts you or your people at risk, you'll tell me. You won't make that decision for me." Marcus's grip tightened slightly. "I promise, but Terrence? It's already dangerous. For both of us. The question isn't whether we're at risk. It's whether we're willing to fight together or lose separately." Thunder cracked outside. Rain began to pelt the bulletproof windows. Terrence's phone buzzed one more time. He finally pulled it out and looked at the screen. Jamal's latest message made his blood freeze. "Enjoy your new cage, Omega. At least when you were mine, I let you pretend you had choices." Marcus read the message over his shoulder, and his expression went dark. "Darius," he called. The driver appeared from wherever he'd been waiting. "I need surveillance on Jamal Hendricks, full profile. Where he goes, who he talks to, what he eats for breakfast. I want to know his patterns better than he does." Already on it, sir. Team's been tracking him since the wedding. Marcus turned back to Terrence. He wants you to think you've traded one cage for another. That's his play. Make you doubt me, doubt yourself, doubt everything except the idea that you're helpless. What if he's right? Terrence whispered. Then prove him wrong. Marcus's voice was steel wrapped in silk. Stay here. Rest. Tomorrow we start building your case. Legal protection, custody documentation, everything you need to make sure he can never touch you or that baby again. Terrence wanted to believe it was possible. Wanted to trust that Marcus's resources and connections and careful planning could actually keep them safe. But Jamal had taught him that trust was expensive, and Terrence had already paid too much. The first morning in Marcus's penthouse, Terrence woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of quiet conversation in the next room. He'd fallen asleep on the leather couch, too exhausted to make it to the guest bedroom Marcus had shown him. Someone, probably Marcus, had covered him with a blanket during the night. The thoughtfulness of it made Terrence's chest tight. He sat up slowly, one hand on his stomach. The baby was quiet this morning, which always made him nervous until the first kick reminded him everything was okay. The voices drifted from the kitchen. Marcus and someone else. A woman. Terrence stood and followed the sound. Found Marcus at the kitchen island with a slim black woman in her 40s, both of them studying documents spread across the marble counter. She had the kind of sharp intelligence in her eyes that suggested she didn't miss details. Mr. Winters, she said when she noticed him. Extended a hand. Simone Parker. I'm Mr. Deveraux's attorney. Just Terrence. He shook her hand. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. You're not. Marcus poured coffee into a mug, then stopped. Can you have coffee? I should have asked before. 1 cup a day is fine. Terrence accepted the mug gratefully. The normalcy of the gesture felt surreal against the backdrop of bulletproof windows and security protocols. Simone gathered the documents into a neat stack. Yeah, I've been reviewing your situation. Marcus has filled me in on the relevant details. Your relationship history with Mr. Hendricks, the pregnancy, the recent threats. Terrence's defenses went up automatically. How much does relevant details include? Everything. Simone's voice was matter-of-fact. The physical abuse, the isolation, the stalking behavior. I need to know all of it if I'm going to build a case that protects you and your child. I never filed police reports. Terrence set down his coffee. I don't have medical records documenting injuries. I don't have proof of anything except some threatening texts and photos. You have more than you think. Simone pulled out a tablet, swiped through several screens. You have a documented history of workplace absences that correlate with periods when Mr. Hendricks would have been in town. You have testimony from friends and coworkers about personality changes during your relationship. You have financial records showing he controlled your access to money. She looked up. And now you have documented stalking and explicit threats. That's enough to start with. Start what? Building a restraining order case. Establishing a pattern of abuse that will be critical when we get to custody arrangements. Simone's eyes were kind but unflinching. Terrence, men like Jamal Hendricks are used to getting what they want. The only way to stop them is to make the cost of continuing higher than the cost of letting go. What does that mean? Marcus answered. It means we make it clear that every time he comes near you, he's risking his reputation, his business relationships, his freedom. Now, we build a legal cage around him so tight that breathing in your direction becomes more trouble than you're worth. The phrasing should have bothered Terrence, more trouble than you're worth, like he was a commodity being appraised. But he understood the strategy. Jamal responded to consequences, not appeals to decency. How long will this take? Months, Simone said honestly. The restraining order we can pursue immediately, but custody battles, especially involving an unborn child, are complex. And Mr. Hendricks will fight. He has resources, family connections, a legal team that's very good at making abuse look like misunderstanding. Terrence felt the weight of it settling over him. Months of legal proceedings while his belly grew and the baby became more real. Months of looking over his shoulder and wondering if Jamal would escalate before the courts could stop him. What if I just disappeared? The question came out before Terrence could stop it. Changed my name, moved somewhere he couldn't find me, started over. Marcus and Simone exchanged a look. That's one option, Simone said carefully. But it comes with trade-offs. You'd be running for the rest of your life, looking over your shoulder forever, and legally he could claim parental rights in absentia, which gets complicated if he ever does track you down. Plus, Marcus added, voice tight, running means he wins. He gets to keep believing he has power over you, that you're his to terrorize whenever he feels like it. Maybe I'm okay with that if it keeps my baby safe. Are you? Marcus leaned against the counter. Because from where I'm standing, you're not someone who runs. You're someone who shows up to weddings where your abuser will be, wearing borrowed confidence like armor, daring him to try his worst. Terrence looked away. That was stupid. That was brave. Marcus's voice was firm. And I'm not letting you pretend otherwise just because things got harder. The baby chose that moment to kick, hard enough that Terrence gasped and pressed his hand to his side. Are you all right? Simone was on her feet immediately. Fine, just the baby likes to remind me it's there. Terrence breathed through the discomfort. Especially when I'm stressed. Marcus crossed to him. May I? The question again, the asking for permission that Jamal never bothered with. Terrence nodded. Marcus's hand settled over his stomach, warm and steady. The baby kicked against his palm. Something flickered across Marcus's face. Wonder, maybe? Or the recognition of just how real this was becoming. Strong, he murmured. Gets it from me, Terrence said, tried to smile. The stubbornness, I mean. Good. Marcus's hand lingered a moment longer before he stepped back. You're going to need it. Simone cleared her throat diplomatically. I'll need to interview you formally, Terrence. Record your testimony while everything's fresh. It's not pleasant. You'll have to recount details you'd probably rather forget. But it's necessary for building the case. Terrence's stomach churned. The thought of narrating his relationship with Jamal, of quantifying abuse into legal language, made him want to crawl back under the blanket and pretend none of this was happening. But the baby kicked again, as a reminder that pretending wasn't an option anymore. Okay, he said. When do we start? After breakfast. Marcus moved to the refrigerator. You need to eat. Simone needs coffee that's actually good instead of whatever she drinks at her office. And I need to make some calls. He pulled out eggs, vegetables, ingredients for what looked like an elaborate omelet. Moved around the kitchen with surprising competence for someone who probably had people to cook for him. Simone settled back onto her stool, hiding a smile. He does this when he's processing. Cooks elaborate meals as a form of control. I can hear you, Marcus said without turning around. I know. Simone winked at Terrence. He also pretends to be irritated when people call out his coping mechanisms. Watching them interact, the easy familiarity, the gentle teasing. Terrence felt a pang of something he couldn't quite name. Loneliness, maybe. Or envy for the kind of relationship where people knew each other's patterns and cared enough to notice when those patterns shifted. His phone buzzed on the counter. All three of them froze. Don't look at it, Marcus said. Darius is monitoring all incoming communications. If it's important, he'll let us know. And if it's Jamal, then we add it to the evidence file. Simone made a note on her tablet. Every text, Every call, every attempt at contact becomes proof of harassment. The phone buzzed again, then a third time in rapid succession. Marcus's own phone lit up. He glanced at it and his expression went dark. "Darius," he answered. "Listen for a moment. Send me the footage." He hung up and pulled up something on his phone. I showed it to Simone first. Her face went carefully neutral, the expression lawyers used when they were already calculating legal strategies. "What is it?" Terrence asked. Marcus turned the phone toward him. Security footage from Terrence's old apartment building. Timestamp from this morning. Jamal standing at Terrence's door knocking, then trying the handle, then pulling out his phone and making a call. "He's at my apartment," Terrence whispered. "He's establishing a pattern," Simone corrected. "Showing up at your residence, attempting contact. When you don't respond, he'll claim he was worried, that he just wanted to make sure you were okay." The footage continued. Jamal knocked again. Harder this time. Then he pulled something from his pocket, a key. "He kept a key?" Terrence's voice cracked. "I changed the locks when I moved in. How does he—" "He made a copy." Marcus's jaw was tight. "Probably had one made months ago before you even left." Insurance policy. On screen, Jamal opened Terrence's apartment door, walked inside like he had every right to be there. Terrence felt violation crawl over his skin. His safe space, the walls that were supposed to protect him, breached by the person he'd worked hardest to keep out. "I'm calling the police," Simone was already dialing. Breaking and entering, even with a key, he doesn't have legal right to access your residence without permission. "He'll say he was worried," Terrence said numbly. "That I wasn't answering my phone, that he just wanted to check on me. And will document that he had no legitimate reason to be concerned since you're not together anymore." Simone spoke quickly into her phone, giving the address. I explaining the situation. Marcus was watching different footage now, another angle showing Jamal moving through Terrence's apartment. Opening drawers, looking in the bathroom, the bedroom. "He's searching for something," Marcus said. "Evidence of where you went, who you're with." Jamal stopped in the middle of the bedroom, pulled out his phone and took a picture of something. "What's he—" Terrence started. Then he remembered. The ultrasound photo he'd left on his nightstand. The one piece of pregnancy evidence he hadn't packed because he'd been too panicked to think clearly. "The baby." Terrence's hands shook. "He's taking pictures of proof I'm pregnant." "Which establishes his knowledge of your condition." Simone was still on the phone with police, but her free hand was already taking notes. It makes it harder for him to claim ignorance later when custody becomes an issue. On screen, Jamal pocketed his phone and left the apartment, closed the door carefully behind him like he'd never been there at all. Marcus's phone rang immediately. He glanced at the caller ID and his expression went colder. "Deveraux," he answered. Listened. "No, I don't know where Terrence is. Why would I?" A pause. "Then you should direct those concerns to his attorney, not to me." He hung up. "That was Jamal?" Terrence asked. "His lawyer, asking if I knew your location, expressing concern about a pregnant Omega who's apparently gone missing." Simone's smile was sharp. "Perfect. Let them establish that narrative. It makes our restraining order case even stronger when we document that you left specifically to escape harassment." "But I didn't tell anyone I was leaving," Terrence protested. "My landlord, my God, Mrs. Chen probably thinks something happened to me." "We'll handle it." Marcus was already typing something. "I'll have Darius contact your landlord. Explain you've relocated temporarily for safety reasons. As for your neighbor, I'll talk to her myself." Terrence pulled out his phone before anyone could argue. "She was kind to me. She deserves to know I'm okay." He dialed Mrs. Chen's number, one of the few contacts he'd actually programmed into his phone during his 6 months of isolation. She answered on the third ring. Terrence? Where are you? That man was here this morning, the one from before. I told him I hadn't seen you. But I'm safe, Mrs. Chen. I'm staying with a friend. I'm sorry I didn't tell you. Things happened very quickly. The baby? Her voice sharpened with concern. Fine. We're both fine. But I need you to do something for me. Terrence glanced at Marcus and Simone, who were pretending not to listen. If that man comes back, if anyone asks about me, don't tell them anything. Not where I am, not that we spoke. Nothing. Silence on the other end. Then, he hurt you before. I suspected, but I didn't want to. I should have said something. It's not your fault. Terrence's throat was tight. But I need you to stay safe too. If he comes back, call the police. Don't open your door. You're scaring me, Terrence. I know, I'm sorry. But please, just be careful. He hung up before the emotion in her voice could break through his carefully maintained control. Simone was watching him with new respect. You're good at this. Managing relationships, keeping people safe. Those are skills that will matter when we get to court. I learned from the best, Terrence said bitterly. Jamal taught me how to lie to protect people, how to make everything look normal when it wasn't. No. Marcus's voice cut through. Jamal taught you how to survive him. What you do with those skills now, that's your choice. The words hung in the air between them. Terrence's phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. You can't hide forever. I know people. I have resources. This ends when I say, it ends. He showed the message to Simone and Marcus. Screenshot it, Simone instructed. Add it to the file. Every threat is evidence. Marcus's expression was carved from ice. He's getting desperate. That's when people make mistakes. Or when they do something irreversible, Terrence countered. Which is why you're staying here until we neutralize the threat. Marcus turned to Simone. How fast can you get the restraining order filed? Emergency petition, we can have it in front of a judge by tomorrow afternoon. If we can demonstrate immediate danger, we can. Marcus pulled up something on his tablet. I have a team documenting every time Jamal goes near Terrence's building, every threatening message, every attempt at contact. We'll bury the judge in evidence. Terrence should feel grateful, should feel protected. Instead, he felt like a problem being managed by professionals who knew exactly how to manipulate systems he'd never understood. I need air, he said abruptly. I can't just sit here while you plan my life. The terrace is safe, Marcus said. Darius swept it this morning. No long-range surveillance possible from neighboring buildings. Of course he had a terrace. Of course it was already secured. Terrence grabbed his coffee and headed for the glass doors he'd noticed earlier. Stepped out into morning air that tasted like rain and city exhaust. The terrace overlooked Brooklyn, Manhattan, rising in the distance like a promise or a threat. Terrence wrapped his hands around the warm mug and tried to remember the last time he'd felt like he controlled anything about his life. The door slid open behind him. Marcus's reflection appeared in the glass. I'm not trying to control you, he said quietly. I know it feels that way. But Terrence, if I don't move fast, if I don't anticipate his next 3 moves, people get hurt. And I won't let you be one of them. What if I'm tired of being protected? Terrence didn't turn around. What if I just want to be normal? Go to my appointments, work a job, raise my baby without armed guards and restraining orders. Then you picked the wrong person to mark you. Marcus moved to stand beside him at the railing. Because normal isn't something I know how to do. I see threats, calculate angles, plan for contingencies that haven't happened yet. It's who I am. And what am I? Terrence finally looked at him. The damsel you rescued? The problem you're solving? What? Marcus met his eyes. You're the first person in 10 years who made me want something more than control. The honesty in his voice was startling. I don't believe in love at first sight, Marcus continued. Don't believe in soulmates or destiny or any of that. But I believe in recognizing strength when I see it. And you, pregnant, terrified, walking into a room full of people who would judge you, you were the strongest person there. I was the dumbest person there, Terrence corrected. I should have stayed home. But you didn't. Marcus's hand settled over Terrence's on the railing. Not possessive, just there. You showed up, you faced him, and when I marked you, you could have said no. Could have run. Could have told me to hell with all of this, but you didn't do that either. Maybe I'm just tired of running. Or maybe, Marcus said softly, you're finally ready to stand your ground. Terrence's phone buzzed again. He didn't need to check it. Knew it would be Jamal, finding new ways to remind Terrence that he was never really free. But standing on this terrace with Marcus's hand warm over his and the baby kicking gently against his ribs, and the city sprawling below them like a battlefield, waiting to be navigated, for the first time in months, Terrence thought maybe he could win. The restraining order hearing was scheduled for 2 p.m. on a Thursday that felt like the longest day of Terrence's life. Simone had prepared him for what to expect. The questions, the scrutiny, the way Jamal's lawyer would try to paint their relationship as a simple breakup gone messy. What she hadn't prepared him for was seeing Jamal again, sitting 20 feet away across a courtroom, looking composed and respectable in a navy suit that probably cost more than Terrence's monthly rent used to be. Now Jamal's eyes found his immediately, held his gaze with an intensity that made Terrence's omega instincts scream conflicting messages. Submit to the alpha, run from the threat, protect the baby, protect yourself. Marcus's hand settled on Terrence's lower back, steady, grounding. He'd insisted on attending despite Simone's concerns that his presence might complicate things. All rise for the Honorable Judge Patricia Morrison. They stood. Terrence's legs felt like water. Judge Morrison was a black woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and no-nonsense demeanor that suggested she'd heard every story, every excuse, every manipulation tactic the legal system had to offer. Please be seated. She reviewed the documents in front of her. This is an emergency petition for a restraining order filed by Terrence Winters against Jamal Hendricks. Ms. Parker, you're representing the petitioner? Yes, Your Honor. Simone stood. My client is seeking protection from ongoing harassment, stalking, and threats from Mr. Hendricks, with whom he was previously in a relationship. Mr. Chen, you're representing Mr. Hendricks? Jamal's lawyer, an Asian man in his 40s with the kind of expensive watch that signaled hourly rates Terrence couldn't imagine, stood. Yes, Your Honor, we're here to contest what we believe is an exaggerated response to a misunderstanding between two people who share a complicated history. Complicated history? Judge Morrison's eyebrow arched. Let's see what we're working with. Ms. Parker, present your case. The next hour blurred into testimony that Terrence had rehearsed a dozen times, but still felt like ripping open wounds that hadn't properly healed. And Simone walked him through the relationship timeline. The early months when everything seemed perfect, the gradual escalation of control, the isolation from friends and family. Can you describe the first time Mr. Hendricks physically hurt you? Simone asked. Terrence's hands clenched in his lap. It was about 8 months into our relationship. I'd made plans to meet a friend for coffee without telling him first. When I got home, he said I'd been disrespectful. That omegas don't just make decisions without consulting their alphas. And what happened? He grabbed my wrist, twisted it hard enough to leave bruises. Then he apologized, said he'd just been worried, that he loved me too much to lose me. Terrence's voice was steady. He'd practiced this. That became the pattern. Control, punishment, apology, over and over. Objection, mister. Chen stood. This is highly inflammatory language describing what sounds like a relationship dispute, not abuse. Overruled, Judge Morrison said. Continue, Mr. Winters. Terrence described the financial control, the monitoring of his phone, the way Jamal had slowly erased every support system until Terrence had no one left who would believe him if he asked for help. When did you end the relationship? Simone asked. 6 months ago. I packed what I could carry and left while he was at work. And when did you discover you were pregnant? 2 weeks later. A murmur went through the courtroom. Judge Morrison's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes sharpened with interest. Did you inform Mr. Hendricks of the pregnancy? Yes, he told me to get rid of it. Said if I kept it, he'd make sure everyone knew what kind of Omega I really was. The kind who traps alphas with pregnancy, who lies and manipulates. Terrence forced himself to look at Jamal. He said the baby would be better off not existing than having me as a parent. Jamal's expression flickered. Just for a second. Something that might have been guilt or might have been irritation at being quoted accurately. Simone presented the evidence methodically. The photos left under Terrence's door. The threatening texts. The security footage of Jamal breaking into Terrence's apartment. My client has been in hiding for a week, Simone said, living in fear that Mr. Hendricks will escalate from surveillance and threats to direct action. He's asking this court for basic protection, a legal barrier that says Mr. Hendricks must stay away from him and the child he's carrying. Mr. Chen stood for cross-examination with the kind of confidence that suggested he'd destroyed witnesses before. Mr. Winters, you testified that my client hurt you, yet you have no medical records documenting these alleged injuries, correct? I didn't go to the doctor. Terrence kept his voice steady. I was too ashamed, too afraid of what it would mean to admit what was happening. Convenient, Mr. Chen smiled. You also testified that my client controlled your finances? Yet bank records show you had access to a joint account with significant funds throughout your relationship. Access that he monitored constantly. If I withdrew money he didn't approve of, there were consequences. What kind of consequences? Terrence's jaw tightened. Emotional abuse, silent treatment, and threats that he'd leave me with nothing if I wasn't grateful for what he provided. So, to be clear, your allegations of abuse consist primarily of your subjective interpretation of normal relationship friction? Objection! Simone was on her feet. Counsel is badgering the witness and minimizing documented stalking behavior. Sustained. Judge Morrison's voice carried warning. Mr. Chen, stick to relevant questions. Mr. Chen shifted tactics. Mr. Winters, isn't it true that you've entered into a relationship with Marcus Deveraux? That you're currently living with him? Terrence felt Marcus tense beside him. I'm staying at a location Mr. Deveraux arranged for my safety, yes. A location you describe as necessary because of my client's alleged threats. Yet this relationship with Mr. Deveraux began publicly at a wedding just days after you claimed to have been hiding in fear. That seems inconsistent. Because your client slapped me in front of 200 people at that wedding, Terrence said, voice rising despite his efforts to stay calm. Because he humiliated me publicly and Mr. Deveraux intervened when no one else would. So Mr. Deveraux is your protector? Your alpha, one might say? He's someone who doesn't put his hands on me without permission, Terrence shot back. Can your client say the same? Judge Morrison's gavel came down. Mr. Chen, move on. Your Honor, we'd like to submit that this entire petition is motivated not by genuine fear, but by a desire to keep my client away from his biological child. Mr. Winters has admitted he's in a new relationship with a man of significant means. He's moved into Mr. Deveraux's residence. He's positioned himself to benefit financially from this claim of abuse. That's not... Terrence started. Simone cut in. Your Honor, Mr. Hendricks' counsel is making unfounded allegations. My client has documentation of threats, proof of stalking, and a pattern of escalating behavior that any reasonable person would find frightening. Judge Morrison raised her hand for silence. I'm going to hear from Mr. Hendricks directly. Mr. Hendricks, please take the stand. Jamal stood, moved to the witness chair with the kind of controlled grace that had once made Terrence's heart race for entirely different reasons. He looked calm, concerned, like a man falsely accused rather than a man facing consequences for his actions. Mr. Hendricks, Mr. Chen began, can you describe your relationship with Terrence Winters? We were together for 2 years. I loved him. I thought we were building a future together. Jamal's voice was smooth, practiced. When he left, I was devastated. I made mistakes trying to reach out to him, trying to understand what went wrong. Mistakes like photographing him without his knowledge? Simone asked during her cross-examination. I was worried about him. He'd gone radio silent, wouldn't respond to messages. I just wanted to make sure he was safe. Safe enough that you broke into his apartment? I had a key from when we were together. I went to check on him when he wouldn't answer his phone. That's not breaking in, that's being concerned. And the threatening messages? The one that said, and I quote, "This ends when I say it ends?" Jamal had the grace to look uncomfortable. I was angry. He'd started a relationship with someone new before even trying to work things out with me. I said things I shouldn't have, but I never intended to hurt him. Yet you slapped him at a wedding in front of witnesses. That was... Jamal hesitated, calculated. A momentary lapse. I saw him with Marcus Deveraux, saw him flaunting a pregnancy that should have been something we discussed together, and I lost control for just a moment. I regret it deeply. Terrence wanted to scream, wanted to stand up and call out every lie, every manipulation, every careful rephrasing of violence into misunderstanding. But Simone had coached him. Stay quiet. Let the evidence speak. Let Jamal's own words trap him. Judge Morrison studied both men for a long moment. I'm going to grant a temporary restraining order, she finally said. Mr. Hendricks, you are to stay at least 500 feet away from Mr. Winters at all times. No contact, direct or through third parties. No attempts to surveil his residence or activities. Violation will result in immediate arrest. Relief flooded through Terrence so intense he thought he might cry. However, Judge Morrison continued, and Terrence's hope faltered. This is temporary pending a full hearing to establish long-term protection and custody arrangements. Mr. Hendricks, you have rights as the biological father of the child Mr. Winters is carrying. Those rights will be addressed through proper legal channels, not through threats or stalking. She looked directly at Jamal. But let me be clear. If I see you in my courtroom again because you violated this order, I will throw the book at you so hard you'll wish you'd stayed 500 feet away from everyone involved. Am I understood? Yes, Your Honor, Jamal said quietly. Good. We'll reconvene in 30 days to review the situation and establish longer-term parameters. Court is adjourned. They stood as Judge Morrison exited. Terrence's legs barely held him. Marcus's hand found the small of his back again. You did well, he murmured. Across the courtroom, Jamal was watching them. His expression was carefully neutral, but something in his eyes promised this wasn't over. That 30 days was just a delay, not a solution. Mr. Chen approached Simone with paperwork. The two lawyers spoke in low tones while Terrence tried to process what had just happened. And he'd won. Temporary victory, but still. Jamal couldn't legally come near him now. So why did he still feel like prey being circled by a predator who'd just learned patience? They left through a side exit. Security protocol Marcus had arranged in advance. Darius waited with the SUV, engine running. Congratulations, he said as they climbed in. That could have gone much worse. It still can, Terrence said. Knew it was true even as he said it. The drive back to Brooklyn was quiet. Terrence watched the city pass, Thought about the baby growing inside him, about the next 30 days of relative safety before they had to do this all over again. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. He'd changed his number twice since leaving Jamal, but somehow messages still got through. The text was simple. Enjoy your temporary win, Omega. And we both know how this really ends. Terrence showed it to Marcus, who immediately forwarded it to Simone with instructions to document the restraining order violation. He's not going to stop, Terrence said. The order doesn't matter. He'll find a way. Then we'll be ready. Marcus's voice was steel. Every violation gives us more ammunition. Every time he can't help himself, he builds our case stronger. And what if he decides building a case doesn't matter? What if he just... Terrence couldn't finish the sentence. Couldn't voice the fear that had been growing since the wedding. Marcus's hand covered his. Then he learns why people in this city don't fuck with what's mine. The possessiveness should have bothered Terrence. Should have reminded him too much of Jamal's claims of ownership. But there was a difference. Marcus said mine like a vow to protect, not a right to control. They pulled into the underground garage, took the private elevator up to the penthouse. Terrence collapsed onto the couch the moment they were inside. The baby kicked. A reminder that none of this was just about him anymore. I need to tell you something, Marcus said. Stood by the windows silhouetted against afternoon light. About why I'm so invested in this. In you. Terrence sat up. Okay. My mother. Marcus's voice was careful. She was in a relationship like yours. My father was, he's dead now, but when he was alive, he made sure everyone knew she belonged to him. Every bruise, every broken bone. Every night she cried herself to sleep. That was him reminding her she'd made a choice and had to live with it. Marcus. I was 12 when she finally left. Packed me and my sister into a car in the middle of the night and drove until we crossed state lines. His hands clenched. He found us 3 months later. Beat her so badly she spent a week in the hospital. And when she got out, when she tried to press charges, everyone said the same thing. She'd made him do it. She'd provoked him. She should have been more grateful for a man who loved her so much he'd fight to keep her. Terrence's throat was tight. What happened to her? She survived. Rebuilt her life. Made sure my sister and I knew that leaving was always an option, that staying with someone who hurt you was never strength. It was just slow death. Marcus turned to face him. But I watched what that survival cost her. The years of looking over her shoulder. The relationships she couldn't trust. The way she flinched at sudden movements for the rest of her life. I'm sorry, Terrence whispered. I'm not telling you this for sympathy. I'm telling you so you understand. When I see Jamal, I see my father. When I see you trying to survive him, I see my mother at 25, thinking she had no options. Marcus moved closer. And I swore when I was 12 years old that if I ever had the power to stop someone like him, I would, no matter what it cost. What if it cost too much? Terrence asked. What if helping me puts you in his crosshairs? Then he better have good aim. Marcus's smile was dangerous. Because I've survived worse than Jamal Hendricks. And I've made a career out of destroying men who think money and connections make them untouchable. The baby kicked hard enough that Terrence gasped. Marcus was beside him in an instant. Are you fine? Just, it's been a long day and the baby knows it. Terrence breathed through the discomfort. Can I ask you something? Anything. What happens when this is over? When Jamal's dealt with and the restraining order is permanent and the baby's here? Terrence met Marcus's eyes. What happens to us? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. I don't know, he admitted. I didn't plan past keeping you safe. Didn't think about what came after. So this whole thing, the marking, the protection, all of it, that was just about stopping him? No. Marcus's hand found Terrence's face, gentle. That was about choosing you. And the rest, we figure out together. Terrence wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that this wasn't just another version of the same story, with a different alpha making different promises that would eventually break the same way. But the baby kicked again, and Marcus's hand moved to his stomach automatically. And for the first time in months, Terrence thought maybe, just maybe, different was possible. His phone buzzed one more time. Another violation, another message. Marcus took the phone without asking, documented the violation, blocked the number, and handed it back. "No more today," he said firmly. "Today you rest. Tomorrow we plan. But right now, you're safe." Terrence leaned into him, let Marcus's arms come around him, let himself believe, just for a moment, that safe was something that could last. The glass shattered 3 seconds after Terrence walked past the window. He hit the floor on instinct, hands covering his head. The baby, always the baby, his first thought as shards rained down across expensive hardwood. The bullet lodged itself in the wall where his chest had been moments before. Marcus was on him immediately, body covering Terrence's, one hand on his phone already barking orders. "Penthouse breach. Sniper fire from the northeast. Get teams on every building in a 6-block radius. Now." Terrence couldn't breathe. Couldn't think past the ringing in his ears and the primal terror that his baby, their baby, had almost died because he'd walked past a window at the wrong moment. "Are you hit?" Marcus's hands were everywhere, checking for blood, for wounds, for anything that would confirm his worst fear. "No, I don't think so." Terrence's voice shook. His whole body shook. The baby kicked frantically inside him, like it understood how close they'd come to ending. Darius burst through the elevator, weapon drawn, eyes scanning the room with military precision. "Penthouse is secure. Shooter's gone. Professional work. One shot. Already evacuated the position before we could lock it down." "How?" Marcus's voice was deadly calm in a way that made Terrence more afraid than shouting would have. "How did someone get a line of sight on my penthouse? We swept every angle, every possible position. New construction 2 blocks over. Went up fast, permits rushed through in the last week." Darius moved to the shattered window, careful to stay out of the sight line. "Someone planned this. Knew exactly where to position. I exactly when to take the shot." Terrence's mind was still catching up. Someone had tried to kill him. Not threaten, not scare. Kill. The restraining order had been in place for 6 days, and already Jamal had escalated from surveillance to assassination. "Get him up." Marcus's voice cut through Terrence's spiraling thoughts. "We're moving locations. Now." "I can't." Terrence tried to stand, but his legs weren't cooperating. The adrenaline that had dropped him to the floor was now making his entire body refuse to function. Marcus lifted him like he weighed nothing, carried him to the elevator while Darius swept ahead, checking corners and exits with the kind of efficiency that suggested this wasn't his first evacuation under fire. "Where are we going?" Terrence managed. "Somewhere no one knows about. Not Simone, not my security team. No one except the 3 of us." Marcus's jaw was set. "Someone leaked your location. That means everyone's a potential threat until we figure out who." The elevator descended in silence, broken only by Terrence's ragged breathing and the baby's continued frantic movement. Terrence's hand pressed against his stomach, trying to soothe both the baby and himself. Trying to believe they were still alive, still whole, still had a chance at surviving this. The parking garage was empty except for a nondescript sedan Terrence had never seen before. Darius opened the back door and Marcus deposited Terrence into the seat with careful urgency before climbing in beside him. "Where to, boss?" Darius started the engine. Marcus gave an address in Queens that meant nothing to Terrence, and they pulled out of the garage through an exit Terrence hadn't known existed, onto streets that looked normal and safe and completely at odds with the reality that someone had just tried to end his life. Was it him? Terrence heard himself ask. Was it Jamal? Who else would have the motivation? Marcus's hand found Terrence's, held tight. He violated the restraining order, hired a professional, tried to eliminate you before the custody hearing could establish his parental rights. That doesn't make sense. If I'm dead, he can't... Terrence stopped. Understanding crashed over him cold and terrible. The baby. If I die now, he could claim the baby. Say he's the grieving father, that I was unstable, that he deserves to raise his child. Marcus's expression confirmed what Terrence had just realized. He's not thinking past revenge, Marcus said. Not considering that a dead Omega means no custody battle, just a funeral and a baby in the system he could potentially claim. He wants you gone, and he's willing to burn everything down to make it happen. Terrence pressed his other hand to his stomach. The baby had finally calmed, exhausted from its own panic. We can't keep running. Eventually he'll find us again. Eventually? Eventually we make sure he can't. Marcus's voice dropped. I've been playing defense, protecting, documenting, building legal cases, but Jamal just changed the game. He tried to kill you. In my home. That means the rules are different now. Something in his tone made Terrence look at him sharply. What are you saying? I'm saying that men like Jamal only understand one language. And legal documents aren't it? Marcus met his eyes. I'm saying that I know people who can make problems disappear. Permanently. Terrence's stomach turned. You're talking about, no, we can't. That makes us just as what? Just as willing to protect what's ours? Marcus's hand tightened on Terrence's. He tried to put a bullet in you, in our baby. And you want to what? Trust the legal system to handle it? Hope that judges and lawyers can stop someone who's already proven he doesn't care about rules? I want to stop him without becoming him. Terrence pulled his hand away. I want to know that when this is over, when our baby asks about their father, both fathers, I can tell them we did the right thing. Not the easy thing, the right thing. Marcus looked away, and his jaw worked like he was swallowing arguments that would only hurt both of them. The car turned onto a residential street in Queens. Small houses with tiny yards, the kind of neighborhood where people knew their neighbors and noticed strangers. Darius pulled into a driveway beside a modest two-story house that looked nothing like the penthouse they'd just fled. Safe house, Darius explained. Registered under a shell company 3 layers deep. No connection to you, me, or Mr. Deveraux. Stocked with supplies for at least 2 weeks. Security system that would make the Pentagon jealous. They went inside. The house was exactly what it looked like from outside. Middle-class normal with furniture that suggested someone's grandmother lived here. But Terrence noticed the reinforced doors, the cameras hidden in smoke detectors, and the panic room entrance disguised as a linen closet. I'll stay until we're sure you're secure, Darius said. Then I need to get back and coordinate with the team. Figure out who leaked the location. It wasn't internal. Marcus was already on his phone, pulling up files. My people are vetted 6 ways from Sunday. This was someone from outside. Someone who had access to information they shouldn't have had. Like who? Terrence asked. Marcus showed him his phone. Security footage from the courthouse. Jamal's lawyer, Mr. Chen, having a conversation with someone in the parking lot after the restraining order hearing. The angle was wrong to see the other person's face, but money clearly changed hands. He bought information. Marcus's voice was ice. Probably from a clerk, someone with access to protected addresses. Yeah, and that's how Jamal knew where to send his sniper. Terrence felt sick. The legal system that was supposed to protect him had just become another weapon Jamal could use against him. So what now? He heard how small his voice sounded. Hated it. We hide here forever? Wait for him to find us again? Now we go on offense. Marcus put away his phone. Simone's already filing emergency motions. Violation of restraining order, attempted murder, conspiracy. By tomorrow morning, every cop in New York will be looking for Jamal. And if they don't find him, then I will. Marcus's expression was carved from stone. One way or another, this ends. Darius's phone buzzed. He stepped away to answer, voice low and urgent. When he came back, his expression was grim. Boss, we have a problem. Jamal's lawyer just filed an emergency petition of his own. Claims you kidnapped Terrence, that the shooting was staged, that you're the real threat. Marcus cursed. Of course he did. Get ahead of the narrative. Make us look like the aggressors. It gets worse. Darius looked at Terrence. He's claiming that Terrence is being held against his will, that the pregnancy is being used as leverage, that you're the one isolating him from everyone who cares about him. The irony would have been funny if it wasn't so dangerous. Jamal was using the exact playbook of abuse: isolate, control, claim victimhood, and projecting it onto Marcus. We need to get ahead of this, Marcus said. Terrence needs to make a statement. Something public, something that clearly establishes he's here by choice. And puts an even bigger target on my back, Terrence added. The moment I go public, Jamal knows exactly how to find me again. So we give him what he wants. Marcus's eyes gleamed with something dangerous. We let him think he's found you. We set a trap. Terrence's hand moved to his stomach. The baby was quiet now, resting, unaware that its parents, all three of them, biological and chosen, were locked in a battle that kept escalating past any reasonable boundary. I'm tired of being bait, Terrence said quietly. I'm tired of men deciding my life for me, even when they say it's for my protection. I want... His voice broke. I just want to be safe. I just want my baby to be safe. Marcus crossed to him, knelt so they were eye level. Then tell me what you want me to do. Not what you think is right, not what you think I want to hear. Tell me what you actually want. Terrence looked at him. This man who'd marked him after knowing him for all of 3 conversations, who'd upended his own life to protect someone he barely knew, who was offering violence wrapped in love like it was a gift. I want him to stop, Terrence whispered. I want him to wake up tomorrow and decide I'm not worth the effort anymore, that the baby isn't worth fighting over. I want him to just let go. People like Jamal don't let go. Marcus's voice was gentle but honest. They escalate until something stops them. The question is whether that something is the legal system, consequences they can't ignore, or you making him disappear. Terrence finished the thought Marcus wouldn't say. I would never ask you to make that choice. Marcus's hand covered Terrence's where it rested on his stomach. But I need you to know, if it comes down to your life or his, if it's between keeping you safe and keeping my hands clean, I know which one I'm choosing. The baby kicked against their joined hands, a reminder of what was at stake, of who would pay the price if any of them made the wrong choice. How did we get here? Terrence asked. How did leaving an abusive relationship turn into assassination attempts in safe houses? Because you chose to survive, Marcus said simply. And people like Jamal can't stand that. Can't accept that someone they hurt decided they deserved better. Darius's phone buzzed again. This time when he answered, his expression shifted from grim to shocked. Boss, he said carefully, you need to see this. He showed them his phone. News article just posted. The headline. Prominent businessman Jamal Hendricks, missing after courthouse appearance. Terrence's heart stopped. What? Marcus grabbed the phone, read quickly. Last seen leaving the courthouse 6 days ago. Hasn't been to his office, his home, hasn't contacted family or business associates. His lawyer reported him missing this morning. This is a setup, Terrence said immediately. He's not missing, he's hiding, building a narrative where he's the victim. Or, Darius said slowly, someone else got to him first. The implications hung in the air between them. Who? Marcus demanded. Who else would have motivation to... You tell me, boss. Darius's expression was carefully neutral. You made some calls after the courthouse. Reached out to people who specialize in making problems go away. Maybe one of them decided to be proactive. Marcus's face went white. I wouldn't have, not without telling Terrence, not without... Then where is he? Darius challenged. Because either he's playing dead to make you look guilty, or someone actually made him dead. Either way, cops are going to come asking questions, and when they do, you're the first person they're going to look at. Terrence felt the walls closing in. If Jamal was really missing, if something had actually happened to him, Marcus would be blamed. Would go to prison. And Terrence would be alone again, only this time with a baby and blood on his hands, even if he'd never asked for any of this. We need a lawyer, Terrence said. His voice sounded distant, like it was coming from someone else. We need Simone, we need... His phone rang, number he didn't recognize. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Terrence? The voice was female, familiar. It's Kaisha, Jamal's sister. Terrence's blood turned to ice. He'd met Keisha twice during his relationship with Jamal, a quiet woman who'd seemed uncomfortable with her brother's behavior, but never quite willing to intervene. I don't know if I should be calling you, Kaisha continued, but Jamal told me if anything ever happened to him, if he ever went missing, I should contact you. He said you'd know what it meant. What meant? Terrence's hand shook. He left something for you, an envelope. Said it was insurance. Said if he disappeared, you needed to see what was inside. Keisha's voice dropped. Terrence, what's going on? What did my brother do? Terrence looked at Marcus, whose expression had gone carefully blank. At Darius? You know, who was already tracking the call, trying to figure out if it was legitimate or another trap. I don't know, Terrence said honestly, but I need to see what's in that envelope. I can bring it to you. Just tell me where... No. Marcus took the phone. Ms. Hendricks, this is Marcus Deveraux. I'm sure you've heard of me. Your brother has made serious threats against Terrence. I can't allow a meeting that might be another attempt to locate him. But if you're willing to leave the envelope with a neutral third party... I know what my brother did, Keisha interrupted. I know he hurt Terrence. I know he's done things, terrible things, and I've stayed quiet because he's family. But if something's happened to him, if he's really gone... Her voice broke. I need to know I did the right thing. That I didn't protect a monster. The raw honesty in her voice cut through Terrence's defenses. The courthouse, he said. Tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. Bring the envelope. We'll meet you on the steps where there are cameras, witnesses. Nothing happens except an exchange. Marcus looked at him like he'd lost his mind. Darius was already shaking his head. Okay, Kaisha said. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. Terrence, be careful. Whatever's in this envelope, Jamal wanted you to see it for a reason. And my brother never did anything without 3 backup plans. She hung up. That was incredibly stupid, Marcus said flatly. Maybe. Terrence stood, hand on his stomach where the baby was starting to wake again. But if Jamal's really missing, that envelope might be the only thing that tells us whether he's dead or just hiding. And I need to know which. Because if he's dead, then Marcus becomes prime suspect in a murder investigation, Darius finished. And you become the motive. The 3 of them stood in the safe house that didn't feel safe anymore, in a city that had become a battleground, playing a game where all the rules had dissolved into violence and desperation. Terrence's phone buzzed. Text from Simone. Police want to interview you about Jamal's disappearance. Don't say anything until I'm present. The trap was closing. Either Jamal was dead and they'd all pay for it, or he was alive. And this was just another manipulation in an endless series. Tomorrow, Marcus said, we meet Keisha, we get the envelope, and then we end this. One way or another. Terrence nodded, knew that tomorrow might bring answers or just more questions. He knew that every choice they made was leading them deeper into territory where right and wrong had stopped meaning anything except survival. The baby kicked. Terrence whispered promises he wasn't sure he could keep. That everything would be okay, that they'd be safe, that the world waiting for them was better than the one they were fighting through now. He wanted to believe it, but belief was a luxury he couldn't afford anymore. The envelope was thicker than Terrence expected. Keisha handed it over on the courthouse steps exactly at 10 a.m., surrounded by lawyers arriving for morning hearings and enough witnesses that Marcus had finally agreed the meeting was relatively safe. She looked exhausted. Dark circles under her eyes, grief written in every line of her face. I don't know what's in there, she said. Jamal gave it to me 3 months ago. Made me promise not to open it, just to deliver it if anything happened to him. She looked at Terrence. I'm sorry for everything, for not stopping him when I should have. It's not your fault, Terrence said. Meant it, even though part of him wanted to scream at her for all the times she'd seen Jamal's true nature and chosen family loyalty over intervention. Keisha left without another word. Terrence stood holding the envelope like it might explode. We should open it somewhere secure, Darius said. Could be a tracker, listening device, something designed to compromise your location. They went to Simone's office instead of the safe house. She'd already swept the room for surveillance, and already had document analysts standing by in case whatever Jamal had left behind required expert interpretation. Terrence's hands shook as he broke the seal. Inside, a flash drive, legal documents, and a handwritten letter in Jamal's distinctive script. The letter was addressed to him. Terrence, he read aloud, if you're reading this, something has happened to me. Either I'm dead or I've had to disappear. Either way, you deserve to know the truth. Everything I did, the control, the isolation, the violence, I learned it from someone. My father taught me that love and power were the same thing, that keeping someone meant breaking them down until they couldn't imagine existing without you. I watched him do it to my mother for 20 years before she finally got away, and by then, I'd already become him. I tried to do it to you. I succeeded in doing it to others before you. This flash drive contains evidence of all of it. Every relationship I destroyed, every person I hurt, every law I broke to maintain control. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not even asking you to understand. I'm giving you weapons. Because if something's happened to me, it means I finally pushed too hard, made an enemy I couldn't control. And that enemy is going to come after you next, Terrence. Not because you did anything wrong, but because you're the one thing I couldn't break. The one person who escaped. That makes you dangerous to everyone who operates the way I did. Marcus Deveraux included. I know you're with him. I know he's promised you protection. But ask yourself, why would a man like Marcus care about a random Omega he barely knows? Why would he risk his empire for someone he met 3 times? The answer is on the flash drive, along with everything else you need to know. Be careful who you trust, Terrence. Sometimes the man protecting you from one monster is just another monster in a better suit. J. The silence in the office was absolute. Terrence's hands had gone numb. He looked at Marcus, whose face had drained of color. Let me see that, Simone said. Took the letter, read it again, then looked at Marcus with an expression Terrence couldn't decipher. We need to see what's on the flash drive. Maybe we don't, Marcus said. His voice was careful. Too careful. Maybe this is exactly what Jamal wanted, to drive a wedge between us even after he's gone. Or maybe, Terrence heard himself say, he's telling the truth. He and you've been lying to me since the wedding. I've never lied to you. Marcus met his eyes. I've protected you. I've given you safety when you had none. You've manipulated me. The words came out quiet, deadly. Just like he did, just with different methods, better tactics. That's not fair. Marcus took a step toward him. You know what we have. You know I care about... Do I? Terrence backed away. Or have I just been trading one cage for another? One alpha's control for another's? He used violence and I used your wealth and power, and the promise that you were different. I am different. Marcus's voice rose. I never hurt you. Never made you feel small. Never... You just erased my agency in different ways. Terrence's eyes burned. Decided where I'd live, how I'd be protected, what risks were acceptable. I'd made me dependent on you instead of on myself. To keep you alive. Marcus's control finally cracked. Everything I've done has been to keep you and that baby alive. And yes, maybe I have my own reasons. Maybe I see myself in this situation, see my mother, see all the times I couldn't protect her. But that doesn't make my feelings for you less real. Doesn't make what we have a lie. What do we have, Marcus? Terrence asked. Do you even know? Or have you been so busy orchestrating protection that you never stop to think about what happens after? Simone cleared her throat. Gentlemen, I strongly recommend we look at the flash drive before we implode everything on speculation. Darius was already connecting it to an isolated laptop. Security protocol to prevent any malware from spreading. Files loaded. Folders organized by year, by name, by type of evidence. Dear God, Simone whispered. The folders contained everything. Photos of women and men, bruised, broken, defeated. Police reports that had been buried. Payoffs to make charges disappear. A whole network of abuse spanning a decade. And in a folder labeled Deveraux, surveillance photos of Marcus. Dozens of them. Going back months before Terrence had ever met him. Terrence's stomach dropped. You were following him? You were... No. Marcus's face had gone white. Jamal was following me. He knew who I was before the wedding. His eyes widened. He put you in my path. That first charity event where we met. That wasn't coincidence. Terrence opened the photo files. Found images of himself at the charity event, Marcus in the background. Jamal had been there too, photographing both of them, and the next folder showed the restaurant where Marcus had sent wine to Terrence's table. More surveillance, more documentation. He staged all of it, Simone said slowly. He broke you down, isolated you, then positioned you where Marcus would see you. Knowing Marcus's history with his mother. Knowing exactly what buttons to push. I'm not a button to push, Terrence said. His voice sounded hollow. I'm a person, not a chess piece in whatever sick game they were playing. You're not, Marcus started. Don't. Terrence held up his hand. Don't tell me what I am. Don't tell me how to feel. Just don't. He kept scrolling through files. Found financial records showing payments from Marcus's accounts to law enforcement, to judges, to people who made problems disappear. You said you knew how to make threats go away, Terrence said. These files suggest you've done it before. A lot. How many people have you protected by eliminating whoever threatened them? That's taken out of context, Marcus said, but his voice was weak. Those are business dealings, legal fees, consulting payments. To a known enforcer? Simone pointed at one of the names. Marcus, this guy's done time for murder for hire. Don't insult our intelligence by claiming these are legal fees. Marcus's jaw worked. Fine. Yes, I've used resources that aren't strictly legal to protect people I care about. To stop threats that the legal system couldn't or wouldn't address. But I never... He looked at Terrence. I never did anything without being absolutely certain it was the only option left. Who decides that? Terrence asked. Who gets to be judge and jury? You? Someone has to. Marcus's voice was steel again. When the system fails, when abusers walk free and victims keep dying, someone has to be willing to do what needs doing. Even if it makes you just like them? The question hung between them. More folders, more evidence. And then Terrence found the one labeled with his own name. Inside, surveillance photos going back not months, but years. Images of Terrence with Jamal, documents detailing the abuse, medical records Terrence didn't remember authorizing, financial forensics showing every transaction Jamal had controlled. You've been watching me for years? Terrence's voice broke. Since before I even left him? Since, oh God, since before you ever spoke to me. Marcus didn't deny it. I started investigating Jamal 2 years ago. Business rivalry. He was muscling into territory that belonged to associates of mine. When I looked into him, I found... He gestured at the files. All of this, the abuse, the pattern, and you kept appearing in the documentation. Always in the background of his life. Always hurt but surviving. So you decided to what? Save me? Add me to your collection of rescued Omegas? There are no others. Marcus's voice was quiet. Just you. Because you reminded me that some people are worth burning the world down for. And yes, maybe that's obsession. Maybe that's me projecting my own damage onto your situation. But it doesn't change that everything I've done has been to keep you safe. Safe? Terrence laughed. It sounded broken. Someone just tried to shoot me through your bulletproof window. Jamal's missing, possibly dead, and we're about to be blamed for it. I'm living in a safe house because my own apartment isn't secure. My Omega biology is making me want to trust you, even when my brain is screaming that this is wrong, that you're wrong, that I'm just repeating the same pattern with a different alpha. The baby kicked. Hard. Reminder that this wasn't just about Terrence anymore. What do you want me to do? Marcus asked. Tell me. I'll do it. Anything. I want you to let me go. The words came out before Terrence could stop them. I want you to take your protection and your resources and your complicated feelings about your mother and just let me handle this myself. You'll die. Marcus said it flatly. If Jamal's really gone, if his people think you're connected to his disappearance, you'll be dead within a week. Is that what you want? For our baby to die because you're too proud to accept help? Our baby? Terrence's voice rose. You marked me at a wedding. You've known me for 3 weeks. That doesn't make this your baby. That makes you an alpha who claimed an omega in a moment of, what, righteous anger? Protective instinct? Whatever you want to call it? Love. Marcus said it simply. It makes me an alpha who fell in love with your strength and wanted to be worthy of it. The honesty of it stole Terrence's breath. That's not fair, he whispered. You can't drop that now when I'm trying to be angry. Trying to see clearly. Then see clearly. Marcus moved closer. See that I'm damaged and controlling and probably obsessive. See that I've done terrible things to protect people I care about. Like, see that I started watching you for the wrong reasons and stayed because I couldn't look away. See all of it. And then tell me that what we have isn't real. Terrence wanted to dismiss everything as manipulation and projection and trauma response. But the baby kicked again, and Marcus's eyes dropped to his stomach with such naked longing that Terrence couldn't pretend anymore. What if we're both too broken for this to work? He asked. Then we're broken together. Marcus's hand hovered near Terrence's face, not touching, asking permission. And maybe that's enough. Simone cleared her throat. This is beautiful and all, but we still have the small problem of Jamal's disappearance and the fact that this flash drive makes you both look incredibly guilty. Darius was still scrolling through files. Boss, there's more here. In communications between Jamal and someone else. Someone planning something big. He pulled up email threads. Messages between Jamal and an unknown contact discussing Terrence, Marcus, the pregnancy. Making plans. The last message, sent the day before Jamal disappeared. It's done. The pieces are in place. When this is over, Deveraux will be finished and the Omega will be mine again. One way or another. He's not missing, Terrence said. He's hiding. This whole thing, the envelope, the confession, the evidence. It's all part of his plan. Plan for what? Marcus demanded. The answer came in the form of Darius's phone ringing. He answered, listened, went pale. There's been a development, he said carefully. Police just found a body in the East River. Male matches Jamal's description. Preliminary ID confirms it's him. The room tilted. Mart, that's impossible, Terrence said. He just sent that email. He's been planning all of this. He can't be... Dead? Simone's voice was grim. Someone found out about his plan. Someone who decided to end it permanently. All eyes turned to Marcus. I didn't, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. I swear to you I didn't order this. Then who did? Terrence asked. Because if he's really dead and they find our connection to him, and all this evidence of your history, Marcus, they're going to arrest you. They're going to charge you with murder. Let them. Marcus's voice was empty. As long as you're safe, as long as the baby's safe, I don't care what happens to me. Well, I care? Terrence's voice cracked. I care that you're about to go to prison for something you maybe didn't even do. And I care that our baby is going to grow up without any father because one's dead and the other's locked up. I care that I finally let myself... He stopped. Couldn't finish. Let yourself what? Marcus asked quietly. Trust someone. Terrence's eyes burned. Let myself believe that maybe love didn't have to hurt. That maybe I could have something good. And now... Police sirens cut through his words. Darius moved to the window. Unmarked cars, 4 of them. They're coming here. Of course they are, Simone said. Someone tipped them off. Someone who knew exactly where we'd be. Jamal, Terrence whispered. Even dead, he's still playing us. The knock on the door was professional, firm, the kind that said this wasn't a request. Mr. Deveraux, a voice called. NYPD. We need to speak with you regarding the death of Jamal Hendricks. Marcus looked at Terrence. His expression was calm, resigned, like he'd always known it would end this way. Don't say anything, Simone hissed. Not a word without me present. Marcus opened the door. 6 detectives, all wearing the expressions of people who already knew they had their suspect. Marcus Deveraux, you're under arrest for the murder of Jamal Hendricks. You have the right to remain silent. The words faded into background noise as they cuffed Marcus's hands behind his back, as they led him past Terrence toward the door. Marcus stopped, looked back. I love you, he said. Simple. Final. Whatever happens next, remember that. Remember that I chose you every time. Then he was gone. I disappeared into police custody in a system that wouldn't care about his reasons, his history, his desperate need to protect someone he loved. Terrence stood in Simone's office, one hand on his stomach where the baby kicked frantically, and realized that Jamal had won after all. Even in death, he'd found a way to destroy them both. Visiting Marcus in jail was like stepping into a nightmare Terrence couldn't wake from. The facility was cold, clinical, designed to strip away humanity and leave only the framework of guilt or innocence. Terrence sat in a plastic chair separated from Marcus by reinforced glass, holding a phone receiver that crackled with bad connection. Marcus looked smaller somehow. Not physically, he still carried himself with that controlled intensity, but diminished. The orange jumpsuit was a humiliation designed to remind him he wasn't in control anymore. "You shouldn't be here," Marcus said through the phone. "You should be at the safe house, protected." "Protected from what?" Terrence asked. "Jamal's dead. You're here. What's left to be afraid of?" "Whoever actually killed him." Marcus's voice was low. "Because it wasn't me, Terrence. I swear on everything, it wasn't me." "I know." The words surprised Terrence as much as they seemed to surprise Marcus. "I've been thinking about the timeline, about the emails, the plan. If you'd known what Jamal was planning, you wouldn't have needed to kill him. You would have just used his own evidence against him." Marcus's eyes searched his face. "You believe me?" "I believe you're capable of violence when you think it's necessary, but you're also strategic. Yeah, killing Jamal doesn't fit your pattern. It's too messy. Too much exposure." Terrence leaned closer to the glass. "Which means someone else wanted him dead. Someone who knew about his plan and decided to shut it down." "Simone's been working the angle," Marcus said. "Looking into Jamal's known associates, people he might have double-crossed. The problem is there are dozens of candidates. He made enemies everywhere he went." "What does the prosecution have?" "Surveillance footage showing Darius near where the body was found. Financial records connecting me to the murder-for-hire enforcer Jamal documented. Motive out the ass. I'm the jealous new alpha eliminating competition for my claimed omega." Marcus's laugh was bitter. "They're building a case that looks airtight on paper." "But it's not. It can't be." Terrence pressed his hand against the glass. "We'll prove you didn't do this. We'll find who really—" "Terrence!" Marcus's voice stopped him. "Even if we prove I didn't personally kill him, I'm still guilty of everything else on that flash drive. The bribes, the intimidation, using illegal means to solve problems. The moment this goes to trial, all of that becomes public record. My business empire collapses. Everyone connected to me faces investigation." "So what, you're just giving up?" "I'm being realistic." Marcus's eyes were tired. "I've lived a certain way for a long time. Told myself it was justified because I was protecting people, stopping threats the system ignored. But Jamal was right about one thing. I'm not that different from him. Just better at hiding it." "That's not true." Terrence's voice rose. Other visitors glanced over. He lowered it again. "You never hurt me, never broke me down, never—" "I controlled you, just with different methods. Money instead of violence. Protection instead of isolation. But the end result is the same. You became dependent on me, on my resources, on my ability to keep you safe." Marcus looked away. "Maybe you're better off without me. Without this mess." The baby kicked hard enough to make Terrence gasp. He pressed his hand to his stomach, breathing through the discomfort. Marcus was on his feet immediately, pressing against the glass. "Are you okay? Is the baby—" "We're fine, just the baby doesn't like when I'm stressed." Terrence managed a weak smile. "Gets it from me, the stubbornness." "Gets it from both of us," Marcus corrected quietly. "That baby has your strength and my refusal to give up even when I should." "Then stop talking about giving up." Terrence met his eyes through the glass. "Fight this. Fight for us. Because I'm not raising this baby alone, and I'm not letting you rot in here for something you didn't do, just because you've decided you deserve punishment for everything else. What if I do deserve it? Then that's something you work through with a therapist, not by accepting a murder charge." Terrence's voice was firm. "I've spent 2 years accepting punishment I didn't deserve. I'm done with that. And I'm not watching you do the same thing." The guard called time. 5 minutes remaining. "Simone's working on bail," Marcus said. "But with the severity of charges, on the flight risk assessment, it's not looking good." "Then we make it look better." Terrence was already planning. We find evidence. We investigate ourselves. We prove you're being framed. We? Marcus's voice was careful. Terrence, you're 7 months pregnant. You should be resting, preparing for the baby, not playing detective. I'm preparing for the baby by making sure it has 2 parents. Terrence stood. I'll be back tomorrow and every day after until we fix this. I love you, Marcus said. I know I've said it wrong, done it wrong, but I know. Terrence's hand found the glass where Marcus's rested on the other side. I'm starting to figure out I love you too. Even though you're complicated and controlling and possibly have a messiah complex. Possibly. Marcus's smile was sad. Yeah, that's generous. The guard came to escort Terrence out. He left without looking back because looking back would make him cry, and he'd promised himself no more tears over men who'd rather sacrifice themselves than trust someone else to help. Simone was waiting in the parking lot, face grim. We have a problem, she said. The prosecution just added charges. Conspiracy to commit murder, witness tampering, and... She hesitated. Attempted kidnapping of an Omega. They think I kidnapped myself? Terrence's voice rose. They think Marcus forced you into a bonding you didn't want. That the marking was coerced. That everything since has been Stockholm Syndrome, wrapped in alpha pheromones and financial dependence. Simone pulled out her tablet. They have witnesses willing to testify you seemed afraid of Marcus at the wedding. That you looked confused, trapped. That's because Jamal had just slapped me, Terrence wanted to scream. Because I was processing trauma, not being kidnapped. I know, but perception is reality in court. And right now, the perception is that Marcus is an obsessive alpha who saw a vulnerable Omega and decided to possess him. That when the Omega's previous alpha objected, Marcus had him eliminated. Terrence felt sick. How do we fight this? By finding the real killer. By proving Jamal's death was part of a larger plan that neither you nor Marcus knew about. Simone started the car. And by hoping we do it before trial, because once this hits a jury, Terrence, Marcus is looking at life without parole. They drove in silence back to the safe house. Darius was there, surrounded by computers and files, yet working with the kind of focused intensity that suggested he'd slept even less than Terrence had. I've been going through Jamal's contacts, Darius said without preamble. Cross-referencing everyone on that flash drive with people who had the means and opportunity to kill him. And 43 possible suspects, most of them connected to Marcus's business dealings. Darius pulled up a spreadsheet. But one name keeps appearing in multiple contexts. Someone who shows up in Jamal's files, in Marcus's security reports, and in the surveillance footage from the night Jamal disappeared. He pulled up an image. A woman, mid-30s. Familiar in a way Terrence couldn't quite place. Who is she? Terrence asked. Ashanti Coleman, former partner of Marcus's. Business and personal. They had a messy split 3 years ago when Marcus discovered she was using his resources for her own illegal activities. Darius pulled up more files. She's been quiet since, but rumor is she's been rebuilding, looking for revenge. Revenge for what? For Marcus cutting her out of everything, for destroying her reputation. For? Darius hesitated. For choosing to protect other people instead of her? Understanding crashed over Terrence. She's jealous. She found out about me and decided to eliminate the competition. While framing Marcus for it in the process, Simone added. It's elegant. Gets rid of Jamal, who was apparently working with her based on these email threads. Eliminates Marcus as competition. Leaves you vulnerable and alone. So she can what? Swoop in and claim me herself? Terrence felt sick. Or just prove that Marcus's protection was an illusion. Darius showed more evidence. She's been feeding information to the prosecution. anonymous tips about Marcus's illegal activities, witnesses who conveniently remember seeing Marcus near the murder scene. Can we prove she did it? Not yet, but we have leads, places to look. Darius stood. I need access to resources Marcus locked down when he got arrested. Accounts only he can authorize. Then we get him to authorize them. Terrence was already pulling out his phone. What do you need? The next 3 days blurred into investigation and exhaustion. Terrence pushed past the physical limitations of late pregnancy, past the exhaustion that made his bones ache, past every reasonable boundary because the alternative was watching Marcus go to prison for a murder he didn't commit. But they found evidence linking Ashanti to the sniper who'd shot at the penthouse. Found financial transfers showing she'd paid Jamal to stage his own disappearance before actually killing him. Found the real plan. Ashanti was consolidating power, eliminating threats, and positioning herself to take over Marcus's entire operation. It's not enough, Simone said on day 3. It's circumstantial, suggestive, but not enough to clear Marcus without reasonable doubt. Then we get her to confess, Terrence said. Everyone looked at him like he'd lost his mind. How exactly do you propose we do that? Simone asked. By giving her what she wants. Terrence stood, one hand on his stomach where the baby was kicking insistently. She wants to prove Marcus's protection doesn't work, that I'm vulnerable. So we make me vulnerable. Absolutely not, Darius said immediately. Marcus would kill me if I let you use yourself as bait. Marcus isn't here to stop me. Terrence's voice was steel. And unless we do something dramatic, he never will be again. So either help me set the trap, or get out of my way. Simone and Darius exchanged looks. If we do this, Simone said carefully, it has to be controlled. Every angle covered. Police involved. You wired for sound? The moment things go wrong, we pull you out. Fine. Terrence was already planning. How do we get her attention? Leave that to me, Darius said. I know how to make you look vulnerable. The warehouse district at night was exactly as ominous as Terrence had imagined. Empty buildings with broken windows, streets where streetlights had given up flickering years ago, on the kind of place where bad things happened, and no one looked twice. Perfect location for a trap. Terrence stood in the center of an abandoned warehouse, one hand on his very pregnant belly, the other holding his phone. The wire hidden under his shirt felt like it was burning against his skin. Darius and a team of undercover officers were positioned in surrounding buildings. Simone was monitoring from a van 2 blocks over. Everyone had argued against this plan. Everyone except Terrence, who knew that sometimes the only way out was through. His phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. I'm impressed you showed up. Most people in your condition would choose safety over revenge. Terrence texted back, this isn't about revenge, it's about truth. The response was immediate. Truth is just the story with better lawyers. You should have learned that by now. Movement in the shadows. Ashanti Coleman stepped into the dim light from Terrence's phone. She was smaller than her surveillance photos suggested, but there was something in her eyes that reminded Terrence of a predator sizing up prey. Terrence Winters, she said. The Omega who broke Marcus Deveraux. I have to admit, I didn't think anyone could do it. Make him care more about protecting someone than protecting himself. I didn't break him, you did. Terrence kept his voice steady. When you framed him for murder. I simply provided the justice system with accurate information about his illegal activities. If that led to an arrest, well... She smiled. He brought that on himself. You killed Jamal. Made it look like Marcus is doing. Can you prove that? Ashanti circled him slowly. Yeah, because from where I'm standing, all the evidence points to a jealous alpha eliminating his competition. Classic crime of passion. Except Marcus doesn't do passion, he does calculation. Terrence turned to keep her in sight. But you know that. You worked with him for years. You know he would never kill someone without exhausting every other option first. Maybe you changed him, made him emotional, reckless. Her eyes dropped to his stomach. Must be powerful being able to make a man like Marcus throw away everything he built just to claim you. He didn't claim me, he marked me. There's a difference. Is there? Ashanti moved closer. Because from my perspective, you're just another Omega who got swept up in an Alpha's obsession. The only difference between Marcus and Jamal is that Marcus has better PR. The difference, Terrence said clearly, making sure the wire caught every word, is that Marcus never hurt me, never threatened me, never hired someone to shoot me through my own window. Ashanti's smile froze. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. You hired the sniper, paid him through the same accounts you used to pay off Jamal. You wanted me dead because I'm proof that Marcus can care about someone other than himself. Other than you. You're making wild accusations. Am I? Terrence pulled out his phone, showed her the financial records Darius had uncovered. These are your accounts. Your money, your carefully constructed plan, falling apart because you underestimated how thoroughly Marcus's people would investigate. Ashanti's expression shifted, the predator finally seeing the trap. Who else knows about this? Her hand moved to her jacket. Terrence saw the outline of a weapon. Everyone who needs to. Terrence didn't back away. The police, Marcus's lawyers, journalists who would love to write about how a business executive framed her ex-partner for murder out of jealousy. Jealousy? Ashanti laughed. I don't get jealous. I eliminate obstacles. And right now, you're the biggest obstacle standing between me and everything Marcus built. So you admit it. Terrence kept his voice calm, even as his heart raced. You killed Jamal, framed Marcus. I tried to have me killed. I admit I'm tired of playing games. Ashanti pulled out the gun. You should have stayed hidden, Omega. Should have let Marcus rot in jail and moved on with your life. But you had to play hero. Had to try to save him. Because he's worth saving. He's a criminal, we both are. The only difference is, I'm honest about what I am. She aimed the gun at Terrence's chest. Nothing personal. You just happened to fall in love with the wrong alpha. Actually, a voice said from the shadows, he fell in love with exactly the right one. Darius and 6 officers emerged from concealment points, weapons drawn. Drop the weapon, Miss Coleman. You're under arrest for the murder of Jamal Hendricks, attempted murder of Terrence Winters, and conspiracy to frame Marcus Deveraux. Ashanti's gun shifted between Terrence and the officers. For a moment, Terrence thought she might actually shoot. Might decide that if she was going down, she'd take him with her. Then her hand lowered. The gun clattered to the concrete floor. You're making a mistake, she said as they cuffed her. Marcus and I are the same. We're both willing to destroy anyone who gets in our way. The only difference is he's better at pretending he's one of the good guys. No, Terrence said. The difference is he learned when to stop. You never did. They led her away. Terrence stood in the empty warehouse, hand on his stomach where the baby was kicking frantically, and finally let himself shake. Simone appeared from the monitoring van, face torn between relief and fury. That was the stupidest, most reckless. She stopped, pulled him into a hug instead. You're never doing anything like that again. I'm not planning to. Terrence's voice was muffled against her shoulder. How long until Marcus is released? Emergency hearing tomorrow morning. With Ashanti's confession and the evidence we've gathered, the charges should be dropped within hours. Simone pulled back. You did it. You actually did it. We did it, Terrence corrected. All of us, together. Darius approached, holstering his weapon. Boss is going to lose his mind when he finds out you used yourself as bait. Boss can deal with it. Terrence smiled. He loves me. He said so. That means he has to accept that I'm not someone who stays on the sidelines while other people fight my battles. He's going to marry you, Darius predicted. Or try to lock you in a tower. Yeah, possibly both. Terrence laughed. It felt good. Felt like breathing for the first time in weeks. The baby kicked again, strong, insistent, a reminder that life kept moving forward regardless of the chaos they'd survived. Let's go home, Terrence said. The real one. Not a safe house, not a penthouse fortress, just home. Where is home? Simone asked gently. Terrence thought about it, about apartments that had never felt safe, about penthouses designed to keep threats out but that also kept life at a distance, about what home actually meant. Wherever Marcus is, he said finally, as long as the doors stay unlocked and the choices stay mine. They left the warehouse behind. Tomorrow would bring freedom for Marcus, consequences for Ashanti, and the beginning of whatever came next. But tonight, Terrence let himself believe that maybe, just maybe, they'd actually survived. That the baby kicking against his ribs would be born into a world where love didn't require breaking yourself into pieces. That the man waiting in a jail cell would come home, and they'd figure out together what being together actually meant. The city lights sparkled as they drove through Brooklyn toward Queens, toward Manhattan, toward wherever home turned out to be. And for the first time since a slap at a wedding had changed everything, Terrence felt something that might have been hope. Marcus was released at 10:37 a.m. on a Thursday that felt like the first day of something Terrence couldn't quite name. Terrence waited outside the jail, one hand on his very pregnant belly, the other shielding his eyes from autumn sunlight that felt too bright after weeks of darkness. The door opened. Marcus walked out, stopped when he saw Terrence standing there. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then Marcus crossed the distance between them and pulled Terrence into his arms. Gentle, careful of the baby, but desperate in a way that made Terrence's throat tight. You used yourself as bait, Marcus said against Terrence's hair. You put yourself and our baby in danger to prove I didn't kill someone. Yes. That was incredibly stupid. Yes. I love you so much it terrifies me. Marcus pulled back just enough to see Terrence's face. And I'm never letting you do anything that reckless again. You don't get to let me do anything. Terrence's voice was firm. That's not how this works. I'm not someone you protect by making decisions for them. I'm someone you protect by standing beside them while they make their own choices. Marcus studied his face. Something in his expression shifted, the last piece of control finally letting go. You're right, he said, and I'm sorry for every time I decided what was best for you without asking. For every time I treated you like someone who needed saving instead of someone who was already saving themselves. I did need saving, Terrence admitted. Just not the way you thought. I needed someone to believe I was strong enough to fight. Not someone to fight for me. The baby kicked hard enough that Marcus felt it. His hand moved to Terrence's stomach automatically, a gesture that had become instinct somewhere between the wedding and now. When's the baby due? Marcus asked. 4 weeks, give or take. Terrence smiled. Doctor says everything's progressing normally, despite the stress, the danger, the multiple life-threatening situations. We're not doing that anymore. Marcus's voice was firm. The danger part. From now on, boring and safe. From now on, honest and real, Terrence corrected. Which might include some danger because life isn't controllable. But we handle it together, as partners. Not as alpha and omega, not as protector and protected. As equals who choose each other. Marcus nodded slowly. I can do that. It'll take practice. I'll mess up, but I can do it. Good. Terrence took his hand. Because I'm tired of being alone. and I'm tired of being saved. I just want to be with someone who sees me. I see you, Marcus said. Terrifying and brilliant and strong enough to walk into a warehouse 8 months pregnant to trap a murderer. I see all of it. Simone pulled up in her car, honked twice. Your chariot awaits, she called, and you're both expected at the courthouse in an hour for the custody hearing. Jamal's parents are contesting your parental rights, Marcus, on the grounds that you're not the biological father. The joy on Marcus's face dimmed. They can't. I marked him. That makes the baby legally mine. Legally complicated, Simone corrected. We'll argue it, but Terrence, you need to be prepared. They're going to claim you were coerced into the marking, that Marcus manipulated a vulnerable Omega. Then I guess I'll have to tell them the truth. Terrence squeezed Marcus's hand. That I chose this. Every part of it. Even the parts that were messy and complicated and probably inadvisable. The courthouse was exactly as Terrence remembered. Cold, clinical, designed to strip away emotion and leave only legal facts. Jamal's parents sat on the opposite side of the courtroom. His mother's eyes were red from crying. His father looked carved from stone. Between them, their lawyer prepared documents that would try to prove Marcus was an unfit parent based on his recent arrest, his criminal connections, his history of violence. Judge Morrison, the same one who'd granted the original restraining order, took her seat. This is a custody hearing regarding the unborn child of Terrence Winters and the late Jamal Hendricks. Mr. Hendricks's parents are seeking to establish grandparental rights and contest Marcus Deveraux's claim as marked partner. Let's begin. The next hour was brutal. Jamal's mother testified about her son's love for Terrence, how he'd always wanted children, how his death had robbed him of the chance to be a father. She cried. The gallery cried. Even the court reporter looked moved. Then Marcus's history was dragged out. Every illegal dealing, every questionable business transaction, every reason he shouldn't be trusted with a child. Mr. Deveraux, Jamal's father's lawyer said, you have a documented history of violence, of criminal activity, of using resources to eliminate threats. Why should this court believe you're capable of raising a child in a safe, stable environment? Marcus looked at Terrence before answering. Because, he said slowly, I love that child's father, and I've learned that safety isn't about eliminating every threat. It's about teaching people they're strong enough to face whatever comes. I can't promise I'll be perfect. Can't promise I won't mess up, but I can promise I'll never make that child feel like love means losing themselves. Beautiful words, the lawyer said, but words don't erase your record. No, Simone stood, but actions do. May I present evidence of Mr. Deveraux's character that the prosecution has conveniently ignored? She submitted documentation of Marcus's charitable work, the scholarship funds he'd established for at-risk youth, the domestic violence shelters he'd funded anonymously, the women and children he'd protected over the years, not through violence, but through providing resources for them to rebuild their lives. My client isn't perfect, Simone said, but he's also not the monster the Hendricks family is painting. He's a man who grew up watching his mother suffer abuse, who swore he'd do everything in his power to protect others from the same fate. Has he made mistakes? Yes. Has he used methods that aren't strictly legal? Yes. But has he ever, in his entire adult life, hurt someone who didn't deserve it? No. Judge Morrison reviewed the evidence. Looked at Marcus, then at Terrence, then at Jamal's grieving parents. Mr. Winters, she said, this is your child, your decision. What do you want? Terrence stood. His hand found his stomach where the baby was resting quietly, like it knew this moment mattered. I want my child to know they're loved. Not controlled, not possessed. Loved. He looked at Jamal's parents. Your son hurt me for 2 years. I tried to make excuses for it, tried to believe it would get better, but it never did. He broke me down piece by piece until I almost forgot who I was. Jamal's mother sobbed. His father's expression didn't change. But this baby, Terrence continued, this baby is going to know a different kind of love. The kind that asks questions instead of making demands. The kind that leaves doors unlocked. The kind that trusts people to make their own choices even when those choices are scary. He turned to Marcus. Marcus isn't perfect. He's controlling and overprotective and sometimes thinks he knows better than everyone else. But he's also honest about his flaws. He's willing to change. He sees me as an equal, not as something to own. And he's already proven he'll put himself at risk to protect not just me, but everyone he cares about. So to answer your question, Your Honor, I want Marcus to be my child's father. Legally, emotionally, completely. Not because biology doesn't matter, but because love matters more. Judge Morrison was quiet for a long moment. I'm going to grant Mr. Deveraux full parental rights, she finally said, with the stipulation that he undergo counseling to address his controlling tendencies, and that both he and Mr. Winters attend co-parenting classes. The Hendricks family will be granted grandparental visitation rights, supervised at first, then unsupervised once we establish that everyone involved can maintain appropriate boundaries. She looked at both sides. This baby deserves to know where they came from, deserves to understand their biological father's family, but they also deserve to be raised by people who can model healthy relationships, who can show them that love doesn't require sacrifice of self. Mr. Winters and Mr. Deveraux have demonstrated that capacity. Case closed. They left the courthouse into afternoon sunshine. Terrence felt lighter than he had in months. We won, Marcus said, like he couldn't quite believe it. We survived, Terrence corrected. The winning comes next, when we figure out how to actually be together without the drama. Marcus pulled him close. I'm looking forward to boring, to coming home and finding you cooking dinner while complaining about pregnancy symptoms, to arguing about what color to paint the nursery, to normal, domestic life. We're probably not going to be good at normal, Terrence warned. We're both too damaged for normal. Then we'll be good at complicated. Marcus's hand found Terrence's stomach again. Together. The baby kicked. Once, twice, like it was agreeing. 3 weeks later, at 2 a.m. on a random Tuesday, Terrence's water broke. Marcus drove to the hospital like he was being pursued, which made Terrence laugh, even through contractions. We're going to make it, Marcus said for the 7th time. The hospital is 5 minutes away. You're fine. Everything's fine. I know. Terrence breathed through another contraction. But you need to hear yourself right now. This is what I mean about controlling. I'm not controlling. I'm concerned. You just ran 3 red lights. I'm efficiently concerned. The baby, a girl with Terrence's eyes and a full head of dark hair, was born at 7:23 a.m. She came out screaming, indignant about the entire process, and didn't stop until Marcus held her. Then she looked up at him with eyes that were already trying to focus, and something in Marcus's expression cracked open. She's perfect, he whispered. She's absolutely perfect. Terrence watched them. This alpha who'd been willing to tear the world apart to protect them, now reduced to tears by a 7-pound baby. What should we name her? Marcus asked. They'd been arguing about names for weeks. Terrence wanted something strong. Marcus wanted something that honored Terrence's mother. They'd agreed on nothing except that it needed to feel right. Hope, Terrence said. Looking at his daughter, at Marcus holding her like she was made of glass and fire, at the future that had seemed impossible 3 months ago. Her name is Hope. Marcus looked up. His eyes were wet. Hope Winters Deveraux? Just Hope Deveraux. Terrence smiled. I'm taking your name, making it official. Not because I'm yours, because we're each other's. 6 months later, they stood in a small ceremony with a handful of people they actually trusted. Simone officiated. Darius stood as best man. Mrs. Chen from Terrence's old building came, still giving Marcus suspicious looks but softening every time she saw how he looked at Terrence. Do you, Terrence Winters, take Marcus Deveraux to be your partner? Not your alpha, not your protector, but your equal? Do you promise to call him out when he's being controlling? To choose him every day? To build a life where doors stay unlocked and love means freedom? I do, Terrence said. And do you, Marcus Deveraux, take Terrence Winters to be your partner? Do you promise to ask instead of demand? To trust instead of control? To remember that loving someone means letting them be who they are, not who you think they should be? I do, Marcus said. Every day, for the rest of my life. They exchanged rings, kissed while Hope babbled from where Darius held her, smiled at each other like they'd just won something more valuable than safety or security or any of the things they'd fought so hard to achieve. They'd won each other. Messy, complicated, beautifully imperfect. And that, Terrence thought as Marcus pulled him close, as their daughter reached for them both as the future spread out uncertain but possible. That was more than enough. That was everything. This is how love stories should end. Not with perfection, but with choice. With two people who have survived the worst and decided to build something better. Subscribe to this channel for more stories that remind you survival is just the beginning, that healing is possible, and that love, when done right, sets you free instead of trapping you. Drop a comment about your own journey. Someone needs to hear your story today. And share this video with anyone who needs to remember. You're stronger than the things that tried to break you. Your story isn't over. The best chapters are still being written. Thank you for being part of this journey. Thank you for believing that hope isn't just a name. It's a choice we make every single day.